Welcome to Fanfiction Hub. Please like, subscribe, and hit that notification button for more. We bring quality fanfiction for your enjoyment and hope to better the contents in the future. Now please enjoy. Chapter 1: 10 Years of Planning. The moonlight at night shines through the clouds and onto the land of the United States. In the top floor office of the Umbrella Building, Manhattan, New York, USA. Li Feng sat in the boss chair looking at the scenery outside through the floor-to-ceiling windows while holding a tall red wine glass in his hand, shaking it slightly. It has been more than 10 years since I came into this world. Time flies. The plot of the Marvel world is about to unfold. I seemed to hear a few days ago that Tony Stark had returned from the Middle East. Dong dong. At this moment there was a knock on the door, interrupting his thoughts. Come in. As the office door opened, a tall, blonde-haired beauty walked in, holding a document and twisting her waist. Da-da-da. The high heels made a crisp sound when they stepped on the ground, as if the gears of fate were turning. The secretary quickly came behind Li Feng. Boss, the Middle East has already paid in full and is urging us to ship the goods. Li Feng turned his chair and looked at the person who came. My secretary's name is Luna. She is a standard Western beauty, about 1.7 meters tall, with green eyes, a high nose bridge, long golden hair, a plump figure, a slender waist, and black stockings on her long white legs. The reason why he chose her as his secretary was certainly not because of her beauty, but because she was an orphan he raised since childhood and was absolutely reliable in terms of loyalty. He took a sip of the red wine in his hand and said calmly, "Since the full payment has been received, let's arrange the shipment." This time, the Middle Eastern buyer ordered 30 doses of C2 virus. The C virus is a new type of RNA virus developed by combining the T2 virus, which was created by combining the T virus with the ancestral virus, and then incorporating the G virus phase. It has the ability to recombinant biological genes, DNA, which can be used to transform organisms and can give the host powerful supernatural powers and resilience. The C virus also greatly stimulates the insect gene fragments in the T virus, so people infected with the C virus will have insect-like characteristics and will undergo a complete metamorphosis development stage of the pupa stage, turning the infected into a completely different new species. However, the initial C virus will cause the host to lose himself and become a mental monster, which is not a very good product. So, on this basis, Li Feng removed the C virus's ability to infect the respiratory tract and turned it into the C2 virus, which can only be injected for strengthening and will not cause the host to lose itself. The enhanced capabilities of the C2 virus are the best choice for those people in the Middle East who are under sanctions and cannot purchase heavy weapons. After all, it requires no logistical maintenance, no ammunition. Logistical supply is highly concealed and can be strengthened with a single injection of medicine. It is simply perfect. However, in terms of price, the C2 virus is a little bit more expensive, costing $1,000,000 each. But to those rich people in the Middle East, $300 million are nothing. They will pay the full amount without leaving any balance. This is why Li Feng likes to trade with them. After he finished speaking, he reminded again with concern, "Remember to take protective measures and don't let any accidents happen." Yes, I will send someone I trust to follow the mission throughout. Boss, this is the information you requested. After saying that, Luna put down the documents in her hand. Li Feng nodded, picked up the document and began to look through it. Above are some detailed reports about a company called Starship Corporation. The Umbrella Group has been at the forefront of the world in biomedicine, touching upon multiple medical and cosmetic fields, so it recently plans to enter the aerospace industry. However, the purchase price of the Starship seems a bit beyond his budget. If he wanted to obtain more than 20% of the shares and have the right to speak, he would definitely be in trouble with his current assets. After thinking for a while, he put down the document and said, "Find a group of environmentalists to cause trouble at Starship, then find someone to speak pessimistically about the company's prospects, and then have someone short the stock price." If you want to start a business in the United States, the easiest way is to find an environmentalist. This is also the most cost-effective and labor-saving way. There is no reason that an environmentalist cannot find, and there is no company that an environmentalist cannot start. He also faced harassment from these environmentalists in the past. He was not good at solving problems, but he was good at solving people who caused problems. Yes, boss, I'll contact them right away. Seeing Li Feng lowering his head, Luna twisted her hips and left the office gracefully in her high heels. As the office door was closed again, Li Feng whispered, "Red Queen." The next second, a projection of a very cute little girl in red clothes appeared in front of him. "Master, what are your orders?" Red Queen is his golden finger that allowed him to travel through time, an extremely powerful artificial intelligence, and she also has various data of the Umbrella Group, including the progenitor virus. His T virus, G virus, and C virus were all derivative products he developed based on the instructions of Red Queen, after he obtained the stairway to the sunflower in Africa and then extracted the progenitor virus. How long is the countdown to the multiverse invasion? There are about 87 years and 3 months left. Hearing that there were still 87 years left, Li Feng did not feel relieved. In his previous life, he was killed by a powerful invader from the multiverse, and this multiverse invasion also came to this world with his travels. Fortunately, before he was killed, he destroyed Umbrella and some powerful people, so he obtained the artificial intelligence Red Queen and some superpowers. Now, with the help of Red Queen and many superpowers, the achievements achieved far exceed those of the past. However, when he thought that some of these powerful people could easily destroy planets and even stars and galaxies, his eyes turned cold. We must do whatever it takes to become stronger. How is the research progress on the controllable G3 virus? Compared to the T virus, which can be controlled by injection from the fetal stage, and the C virus, which has a relatively low infectivity, the G virus is more violent and difficult to control. This is also the reason why he has been selling T virus and C virus, but has never sold G virus. Merchants also have business ethics and will not sell products that they cannot control. Master, the G3 virus has entered the final testing phase and is now waiting for human trials. Then let the task force find some homeless people and start the human experiment. If you were to ask what is the most abundant thing in the United States, it would naturally be homeless people, which is a specialty of the United States. You should know that the United States has millions of illegal immigrants and nearly 1 million legal immigrants every year. But have you seen the U.S. population increase over the years? There is no need to explain the reasons behind this. Those who understand will understand. Yes, Master. Have you got any clues about the research on the blacklight virus? In addition to possessing a database of various viruses, Red Queen also has the ability to conduct independent research and development. Li Feng simply described the characteristics of the blacklight virus and then began to let Red Queen study it. Master, according to your description, the blacklight virus is too powerful. Research has reached a bottleneck. Unless we obtain the X genes of the self-healing and absorption systems, we can conduct human research. X gene. Li Feng nodded, picked up the wine glass on the desk, took a sip of red wine, then turned his chair to look at the night view outside. At this time, moonlight appeared from outside the window, but it strangely bypassed his figure. It seems that even the moonlight dare not touch this man. It's almost time, the era of transcendence has begun. In this Marvel world there are mutants. Chapter 2 Charity Gala. One night a month later. The clear bright moon is hanging high in the sky and the cold moonlight is shining on the earth, trying its best to dispel the boundless darkness here with its weak light. The third annual charity ball is being held at the Walt Disney Concert Hall in New York City. With the arrival of luxury cars, a large number of wealthy people from the United States also gathered here. Squeak! There was a sound of brakes and Luna, wearing a backless black evening dress and black high heels, opened the car door and got out, then walked towards the concert hall with elegant steps. That beautiful face and tall figure instantly became the highlight of the scene as soon as she appeared. So most of the reporters gathered around to take pictures, just like sharks smelling blood. "Hello, Miss Luna, I heard that the Umbrella Group is secretly acquiring Starfleet Corporation. Is that true?" Ms. Luna, a few days ago, Norman Osborn angrily criticized the Umbrella Group and wanted to replace the Osborn Group as the #1 pharmaceutical company in the United States. What do you think about this? "I heard that the Umbrella Group is preparing to actively cooperate with the military. Is Umbrella preparing to enter the military field?" Some time ago, someone exposed that the wastewater discharge of the Umbrella Group did not meet the standards. What does Ms. Luna have to say about this? Facing reporters' questions, Luna just kept smiling throughout but didn't say a word and continued walking towards the concert hall. The questions from these reporters were very tricky and sharp, and she had no idea how to answer them. So not answering became the best option. After all, Umbrella is now one of the top companies in the industry and has passed the stage where it needs media fame. It was not until she entered the concert hall that she got rid of these annoying reporters and felt tired in her heart. "Boss, you really know how to find work for me. You even ask me to work overtime so late at night." She should have been off work and resting, but Li Feng suddenly arranged for her to attend this charity dinner, which made her unable to help but complain. As the grumbling and complaining sounds began, the microphone next to her ear soon transmitted back Li Feng's voice. "Thank you for your hard work. I'll give you a promotion and a raise when you come back." Last month, a reporter infiltrated Umbrella's chemical plant and wrote an article on the grounds that wastewater discharge did not meet standards. So Li Feng asked Luna to represent Umbrella in this charity gala in order to enhance Umbrella's public image and reputation. In fact, this incident does not have much impact. After all, 11 out of 10 factories in the United States do not meet the standards. The extra one is a small workshop. But now is a critical moment, so Li Feng doesn't want any accidents to happen. Luna smiled at her boss' words, picked up her wine glass and said unhappily, "No, boss, you make me work overtime so late every day, you must compensate me." "What compensation do you want?" "I have next week off and I want you to go to Disneyland with me." "Okay, I'm busy here, keep in touch just in case." Bye. In the Umbrella Underground Laboratory, Li Feng turned his head and looked at the experimental subject in the laboratory whose right hand had become enlarged and had grown a very large eye. After thinking for a while, he said, "Red Queen, increase the stimulation to the nemesis parasites and increase the injection of special nutrient solution." "Yes, master." As waves of weak electric current appeared, the parasites in the experimental body began to move restlessly, which accelerated the evolution of the experimental body. Roar! However, under the influence of special sedatives, the subject was completely powerless and could not break free from the alloy handcuffs and leg irons. However, the evolution speed of the experimental subjects did not satisfy him. "Increase the dosage of the G-virus." "Yes, master." Looking at the increasingly ferocious experimental subject in front of him, Li Feng finally showed a satisfied look. Bye. In the Walt Disney Concert Hall, when Luna heard that her boss agreed to her request, she immediately smiled brightly. "I finally got the boss out, which is really rare. Normally, the boss is always doing research in the company, and it can almost be said that he never goes out. So even now, in my 30s, I am still single and have never been involved in any scandals. By the way, does this count as a date?" Thinking of this, her face suddenly turned slightly red. This scene was immediately seen by a man nearby. So the man came over with a glass of wine. "My beautiful lady, would you mind dancing with me tonight?" Hearing the voice, Luna turned around and saw a handsome man in a suit and tie. The other person had short brown hair and eyes, was only about 1.7 meters tall, and had the temperament of a playboy and a dandy. She immediately remembered who the other person was. Tony Stark, the famous American playboy and chairman of Stark Enterprises. After thinking about it, she realized that there didn't seem to be any conflicts between Umbrella Group and Stark Enterprises recently, so her expression remained unchanged. Mr. Stark, I think that lady might be looking for you. Tony followed Luna's gaze and saw the gloomy-looking Pepper Potts, Virginia Pepper Potts, not far away. But at this time Pepper was only his assistant and secretary, so Tony just shrugged calmly and walked over with a glass of wine. "Oh, you're so beautiful, I almost didn't recognize you." When Pepper saw Tony coming over, her depressed mood improved a little and she smiled. "What are you doing here?" "I'm here to find out the truth. Your dress is so beautiful. Where did you get it from?" "I have to say, Pepper is really beautiful tonight." With a face delicately made up, a blue backless evening dress, and a slender figure and curvy body, no one could outshine her except Luna. But her answer made Tony a little embarrassed. "This suit, you gave it to me." "Really?" "Yes, it's the birthday present you gave me." Fortunately, Tony knew that Pepper was not a stingy person, otherwise he would have wanted to crawl into the ground at this moment. "I can't even remember the birthday present I gave to someone else. Obviously, this means that I don't care about the other person." So he took the opportunity to change the subject. "Come on, let's go dance." Pepper was delighted by the invitation, but she was still very shy and was dragged by Tony into the ball. In fact, people who work at Stark Enterprises know that she has always liked Tony. But unfortunately, Tony used to be accompanied by a different Victoria's Secret lady every week, so she could only keep this love in her heart and quietly serve as a life assistant. Chapter 3: Shy Girl. Next to the bar in the charity ball hall, Luna saw Tony and Pepper dancing together on the dance floor, and an envious look appeared in her eyes. Even Pepper, the personal assistant, can be favored by Tony, so does that mean that there will be opportunities for herself and her boss in the future? Just as she was thinking about it, a voice beside her interrupted her. "Hello, Miss Luna." Turning around, Luna saw a man who looked very formal, wearing a black suit and tie with his hands crossed in front of him. The other person was probably in his 30s, with a crew cut, brown hair and eyes and a high nose bridge. Luna searched her memory, but she just couldn't remember who the other person was. "You are." "My name is Coulson, an agent of the Strategic Homeland Defense Attack and Logistics Support Agency." Strategic Homeland Defense Attack and Logistics Support Agency. What department is this with such a long and ugly name? I have never heard of it before. Just when Luna was confused, the voice of the little girl Red Queen rang out from the microphone next to her ear. The Strategic Homeland Defense Attack and Logistics Support Agency, referred to as SHIELD, is an organization under the Security Council that deals with supernatural matters. The boss has been avoiding contact with this kind of organization, so please don't talk too much, Miss Luna. This is why she wears a headset. In addition to being able to contact Li Feng, she can also get help from Hong Hu at any time and avoid many misunderstandings. Even when in danger, you can get quick rescue through Red Queen. After listening to Red Queen's explanation, Luna immediately picked up the wine glass. "Sorry, I might need some quiet time." After saying that, she left without looking back. As Li Feng's absolute confidant, she naturally would not go against Li Feng's wishes. Coulson looked at Luna's back and his eyes flickered for a moment, but in the end he did not continue to pester her. Because according to SHIELD's intelligence, Luna is a core figure of Umbrella. He knew it wasn't easy to approach this kind of person. This Umbrella guy is so cautious. Shaking his head, he turned to look at Tony and Pepper on the other side. At the dance. Tony, who was dancing, noticed Pepper's nervousness, so he suggested, "Let's go out and get some fresh air." Pepper heaved a sigh of relief when she heard that. "Well, I think so too." Although she appeared calm and composed on the surface, she was actually extremely nervous at the moment. As a graduate of a prestigious university, she has always had her standards high and few men could catch her eye. So she has been single for all these years. "It was my first time dancing with Tony, my first time having Tony hug his waist, and we were in such an intimate situation. It would be strange if I wasn't nervous." A moment later, Tony and Pepper came out onto the balcony. Whoosh! Taking a few deep breaths of fresh air made Pepper feel a little more relaxed. It just felt weird. Tony smiled and advised, "You don't have to be so nervous." Looking at Pepper's blushing face, he was almost certain that the person who was hiding it from him was not the other person. And for some reason, he felt that Pepper was so beautiful, a feeling he had never found in those Victoria's Secret models. "That is the truth." Pepper shook her head instinctively and retorted, "No, I'm not nervous, it's just, there are too many people." For some reason, she didn't want to act too immature in front of Tony, letting him see that she was a girl who had never been in a relationship. Perhaps she wanted to show her most perfect side in front of her beloved. But she didn't understand why at this moment. Tony continued to comfort her, "It's okay, we're just dancing." Pepper still shook her head and said hesitantly, "You don't understand. Everyone knows who you are, they know that you are a playboy." As soon as she said this, she suddenly felt that she seemed to be belittling the other person, so she immediately changed the subject. "Of course, there's nothing wrong with that, but when it comes to me, you're my boss, I'm dancing with you." "No, it's not what you think. Others will think that I am a woman who does whatever it takes. I think you're making a big deal out of nothing. And I'm wearing this weird clothes and dancing like this." The two people who were arguing suddenly looked into each other's eyes. An ambiguous atmosphere slowly emerged and the atmosphere suddenly became quiet. After a while, their lips began to slowly move closer. Just then, Pepper suddenly stepped back slightly. "I'd like a drink." As a woman who was still experiencing her first kiss, she felt that everything happened too fast and had to drink a glass of wine to give herself courage. Tony, who has been in the love field for more than 10 years, immediately knew why the other party suddenly wanted to drink. He would not refuse this request. After all, after what happened in the Middle East, he has matured a lot mentally. He no longer hangs out with those Victoria's Secret models and just wants to live a good life. And Pepper, who knows him well, is his best choice for marriage at the moment. "Okay, no problem. I'll have a cocktail." "Okay. I want something stronger with more olives." "Can." Soon Tony arrived at the bar of the dance party. "I want a glass of strong wine with 3 olive branches and a glass with extra olive branches." After giving instructions to the bartender, Tony brought out the traditional American culture, tipping. In fact, he came to attend the charity gala this time just on a whim. Originally, he was working on improving some problems with the Mark II, but he accidentally saw the news saying that there was a charity dinner in the evening and he had agreed to it, but he knew nothing about it, so he came to take a look out of curiosity. "Who is hiding something and doing things outside under my name?" Now it seems that it is not Pepper. But if not Pepper, who else could it be? Soon a name appeared in his mind. But the next second, he immediately threw the name out. The other person is his most beloved uncle who helped him run the company in order when his father passed away. It couldn't be that other person. Just as he was thinking, a blonde beauty with her hair tied up and wearing a low-cut black evening dress walked over. "Wow, Tony Stark." Looking at the beauty in front of him, who seemed to be as beautiful as Pepper, Tony felt that she looked familiar, but he couldn't remember who she was. However, as a veteran in the love field, he responded very skillfully, "Oh, hi." The blonde beauty came up to Tony and said with a mocking smile, "Nice to see you here." Chapter 4 For Your Own Good. Tony looked at the beauty in front of him, trying hard to recall her name in his mind. But maybe he had come into contact with too many beautiful women and had too many one-night stands, so he really couldn't remember who the other person was. The blonde noticed that Tony seemed to have forgotten about her, so the smile disappeared from her face. "Chris." Tony felt awkward. "Yes, it's you." Seeing this, Chris teased, "You seem to be in a good mood tonight." Seeing Tony's confused look, she continued, "At least tell me how you feel about me." At this moment, Tony was not only confused, but also felt panic and doubt. Because he completely forgot when he had ever had an in-depth communication with the other party. Damn it, is it possible that my memory has declined? I even forgot that I had communicated with a beauty of this level. Besides, there was a Pepper waiting for him on the balcony. He must not let her find out that he had been chatting with another woman in the few seconds he was away. A little panicky, I feel really panicky alcohol quick. He said the last two sentences to urge the bartender. Chris saw Tony's evasion, but she thought of something else. Is it because I pointed out that your company was involved in that dark activity? Some time ago, the dark forces in the Middle East launched a number of dark activities, causing huge damage and casualties in the local area. And she was the first one to stand up and point out that the dark forces were using Stark Enterprises weapons. Hearing this, Tony came to his senses and realized that the other party was probably trying to blame him, so he immediately said, I just came here at the invitation and I don't know anything else. Seeing that Tony was still treating him perfunctorily, Chris immediately showed a look of disappointment. I really believed every word you said. Seeing that the other party was still holding on to him, Tony could only say, I've been away for 2 months so I may not know anything. Seeing that Tony really seemed to know nothing, Chris took out a few photos from his arms. Is this what you call being responsible? At the press conference, she questioned Tony about the dark forces in the Middle East. Tony also promised in front of reporters and media that he would take responsibility, but he didn't expect that the so-called responsibility meant disappearing for 2 months. This was so disappointing to her. Tony took it and looked at it. The photo is a little blurry, probably because it was taken a little far away, but it is still very clear. There are dark elements inside with guns pointed at innocent civilians, as well as various weapons and equipment produced by Stark Enterprises, including the latest missiles. Seeing this, Tony was suddenly in extreme shock. How is this possible? Didn't I announce the closure of the Weapons Research and Development and Production Department? How could there still be weapons ready to fall into the hands of the dark elements? Someone betrayed him and his trust. At this time, Chris continued, this area is called Gumira, have you heard of it? Hearing that there was a real name, Tony couldn't help but believe it a little. When was it taken? Taken yesterday. I did not approve any transaction. It was your company that did it. Tony suddenly became angry when he heard the accusation in Chris's tone. My company is not me. After saying that, he left Chris and walked out of the hall angrily. Outside the hall, he saw his beloved uncle, Obadiah Stane. Obadiah was seen responding to reporters' questions at this time, and his answers were orderly and showed the temperament of a superior. Seeing this, Tony suppressed his anger slightly. Obadiah, what's going on? Obadiah saw Tony's suppressed anger, so he said coldly to the reporter, stop filming. The tone of the superior immediately made the reporters stop filming. Even though Obadiah has always been surpassed by Tony in Stark Industries, in their eyes, the other party is also an unattainable figure. Soon, Obadiah took Tony a few steps back and asked in confusion, what's the matter? At this moment, he already had a bad premonition in his heart, as if the boy in front of him was about to get out of his control. Tony took out the photos in his hand and asked, have you seen these photos? What's going on with Gumira? Seeing the photo in Tony's hand, Obadiah knew that his anxiety had become a reality, but he still tried to comfort him. Tony, you can't be so naive. Tony became even more excited when he heard this. I was indeed naive, but my father told me that weapons cannot be used for massacres. This is the bottom line that cannot be crossed. But now someone is doing a deal behind my back, which I absolutely cannot tolerate. After saying this, he looked intently at Obadiah. In fact, he already had a guess in his mind. There were very few people in Stark Enterprises who had the authority to do deals behind the scenes without his permission. And the person in front of me is the biggest suspect. But the other party is his uncle who has taken care of him for decades, so from an emotional point of view, he is not willing to believe this. Obadiah looked at Tony in front of him and finally sighed slightly as if he had made a decision in his heart, and then he smiled. Tony, let's take a picture together. After saying this, he put his arm around Tony's shoulders and turned around to face the many reporters. Come on, it's time to take pictures. Upon hearing this, the reporters below immediately raised their cameras. Look here. Here. Ready. Seeing this, Obadiah moved slightly closer to Tony, acting very intimately, and whispered in his ear, "Tony, do you know who applied to the board of directors to deprive you of your chairmanship? Yes, that person is me. I am doing this for your own good. I cannot bear to see you destroy Stark Industries." After saying that, he patted Tony on the shoulder and left. The things he did were not kept secret. As long as Tony was willing to check, he would find out soon. So it is better to take the initiative to say it. At least you can win the favor of being honest. Tony heard with his own ears that it was indeed his uncle Obadiah who betrayed him. He was stunned where he was, with all kinds of feelings flashing through his mind. There is disappointment, discomfort, sadness, loss, and so on. The other side. After leaving Tony, Obadiah walked towards his car. When he closed the door and got into the car, he suddenly found that there was a stranger next to him. A very beautiful blonde. This immediately made him alert. "Who are you? Don't say it was an affair." He trusted his men and would never allow anyone to get in his car without his permission. This was the ironclad conclusion he came to after several assassination attempts. Luna saw Obadiah's wariness and hostility, so she gave him a kind smile. "Hello, my name is Luna, and I'm the secretary of the chairman of Umbrella." Chapter 5 Mark III. Night. The moon hangs high in the sky, bringing a ray of light to the earth with its faint moonlight. On a cliff on the New York seashore, there is a large white villa. The facilities here are extremely luxurious, including swimming pools, gardens, woods, various artworks and statues, etc. Whoa! At this time, a luxury car drove up from a distance and stopped at the door of the villa. Then Tony, with an angry face, opened the car door. "I will never allow anyone to use my weapons to massacre civilians." Since being kidnapped by dark forces in the Middle East, he has seen the cruelty and bloodiness of war, as well as the disasters that modern weapons have brought to people. The corpses, the crying people, and even the children who were starving to the point of being just skin and bones, deeply stung his conscience. So after he escaped from the clutches of the dark forces, the first thing he did when he returned to the United States was to shut down the Weapons Research and Development Department of Stark Enterprises. He once naively thought that by doing so he could prevent the weapons he developed from entering the Middle East and being regarded as an accomplice in the massacre of civilians. But his conversation with Obadiah made him realize that he was indeed too naive. Even after its Weapons Research and Development Department was shut down, Stark Enterprises continued to supply arms to the dark forces in the Middle East. This made him feel mixed emotions. His heart was filled with grief and anger, and he felt even more sorry for those who sacrificed their lives to save him. So he didn't even bother to take care of Pepper's wine and hurried back home. After entering his villa, he immediately went to the research institute in the basement. Jarvis Mark III. Jarvis is an artificial intelligence butler he developed. The name Jarvis was the name of the Stark family's butler for decades. Ever since the old butler died, Tony has not recruited another butler for some reason. Instead, he developed artificial intelligence to replace the role of the butler. However, after years of improvement, Jarvis is no longer just a butler, but has also become an assistant and helper in his various research. "Sir, the parts for the Mark III have been manufactured." "It is good." After hearing Jarvis' answer, Tony immediately took out the modified mechanical arm and turned on the TV. Soon a piece of news appeared. In the area 15 kilometers leading to Gumira, this place can be called the Journey of Death. A new warlord force emerged and drove away the farmers and herdsmen who had lived here for generations, forcing them to leave their homes and become displaced. This new warlord force was called the 10 Rings Gang by the local people. 10 Rings Gang. Tony was immediately furious when he saw the news, so he started screwing the robotic arm and checking the situation. And the news on TV continued. A child innocently asked, "Where are my parents?" These refugees have fallen into despair and can only hope in their hearts that someone can save them. After completing the modification of Mark III's arm, Tony looked up at the mirror and fired a palm cannon. With a loud bang, the mirror was broken instantly. Looking at the power of the palm cannon, Tony nodded with satisfaction and then began to put on a full set of Mark III armor. It's time to abandon your naivety and solve problems the manly way. 10 Rings gang, just wait for me. Boom! Soon, a roar was heard, and a golden and red figure flew out of the villa and disappeared into the clouds. The Jumeirah, this is the name of a region in the Middle East. In the past, the name of this area was inconspicuous or even unknown to the world. However, due to the emergence of a dark force called the 10 Rings Gang, it is now gradually becoming known to the public. The 10 Rings Gang is notorious and has caused many dark events and killed many people internationally. For some reasons, the United States and Western forces have not shown up and just watched the 10 Rings Gang commit evil and massacre civilians. A few hours later, Tony flew here wearing the Iron Man armor. Because of the time difference, it is noon here and the sky is sunny. Duh. I help. Do not kill me. Daddy. Save me, please. The sounds of gunfire, shelling, screams, and cries for help continued to ring out in the Jumeirah area. I saw a group of dark men with veils on their faces, shooting civilians with rifles. After controlling these civilians, the dark elements began to arrest civilians and escorted them to trucks, taking them to an unknown place. Get in the car. Put your things down and stand still. Daddy. At this time, a boy was unwilling to be separated from his father, so he pushed away the dark elements around him and ran towards his father. When a dark element saw this, a bloodthirsty look immediately flashed in his eyes. He raised his rifle without hesitation and pulled the trigger. Duh. Just as the boy was about to fall under the gun, a gold and red robot suddenly fell down and blocked the boy. Ding. There was a sound of steel colliding. The bullets hit the robot but only removed a little paint. Tony raised his head and looked coldly at the enemy who shot at him. The next second, he stepped forward and punched him. Bang! With the help of Mark III, he was like a little Superman, knocking the enemy more than 10 meters away with one punch. Then he turned around and blasted an enemy away with a palm cannon, and then blasted another enemy away with another palm cannon. Upon seeing this, the members of the dark forces around them immediately picked up their weapons and pointed them at the hostages around them. Lay down your weapon. What a monster are you? If you don't want them to die, get out of here. Of course, they all spoke in the local language, which Tony couldn't understand at all. But Tony also understood the actions of these people pointing weapons at civilians, so his face darkened and he put down his hands obediently. This action immediately made the members of the dark forces even more arrogant. However, because the bullet just now did not cause any damage to the robot in front of them, they were not stupid enough to continue attacking with the rifles in their hands. Tony also took advantage of the dark element's panic, activated the auxiliary aiming system on the Mark III, and began to aim at these dark elements one by one. The next second, 2 mini magazines popped out from the shoulders of Mark III, and then 8 mini missiles were fired, instantly killing the 8 dark elements in front of him one by one. Seeing all the dark elements dead, the civilians did not cheer, but just looked at the robots that suddenly appeared in front of them with horror and fear. The small leader of the dark forces hiding behind the wall saw how brutal the robot was, so he took out his cell phone and began to ask for help from his men in other places. At this moment, an arm suddenly stretched out from behind the wall, grabbed the little leader's shoulder and threw him out. Boom! Chapter 6: An accident happens. The little leader who was thrown out fell to the ground, and the surrounding civilians looked at the little leader on the ground and immediately became angry and surrounded him. You have to know that their families, relatives, and friends were all slaughtered or taken away by these dark elements. It is no exaggeration to say that it is a blood feud. When Tony saw that the situation was settled, he prepared to take off and head to the next place to continue fighting the dark elements. But at this moment, the refugees who surrounded and beat the small leader were suddenly overthrown. I help. No. There's a monster, run. Woo-oh. Turning his head, Tony's pupils suddenly contracted. The little leader who was originally beaten by civilians suddenly changed his appearance and turned into a monster. Although this monster still has a human appearance, its hands have turned into two mantis-like sickles, and some insect-like armor has grown on its skin. Hiss! With a roar from the little leader, he immediately rushed towards Tony. That speed is far beyond the limit of ordinary people, almost 3 seconds per 100 meters. Tony, who was more than 10 meters away, didn't even have time to react before he was knocked away in an instant. Boom! After repelling Tony, the little leader did not pursue the victory but looked down at his hands and body, then revealed a complicated expression. There was excitement, thrill, disgust, and aversion, but more of it was gratitude for surviving the disaster. Obviously, even if the little boss turned into a monster, he still had the consciousness of a human being. He immediately recalled that a few days ago, he accepted the gift of the Son of God and became a new human being. At that time, he was injected with a dark red liquid, which felt cool and seemed very comfortable. This made him think for a moment that they were some kind of new drug addicts who were using them as experiments. But later he found that his strength and endurance had improved a little, so he treated this red liquid as some kind of ordinary strengthening potion. But I didn't expect that the gift of the Son of God would only take effect after being seriously injured. At this moment he felt great, very powerful, even omnipotent. Hey hiss! On the other side. With a bang, Tony fell to the ground, rolled several times, and finally stopped. After standing up, he shook his dizzy head, then looked at the little leader who had turned into a monster more than 20 meters away with an expression of disbelief. Damn it, what's going on? Jarvis analyzed the situation. Mr. Stark, according to the current data analysis, the opponent should have awakened some kind of superpower. His strength is more than 30 times that of an ordinary person. We should not engage in close combat with him. Tony rolled his eyes when he heard this. Of course he knew it was not advisable to engage in close combat with the opponent. After all, he is just an ordinary man wearing the Mark III armor. Although he can fly and fight and his defense and firepower are amazing, his nerve reaction speed is still that of an ordinary person. The monster in front of him was so fast, so its nerve reaction speed was naturally much faster than his. At this time, Jarvis's voice continued to ring in his ears. Mr. Stark, I found that your armor has been severely damaged. I suggest you go back and repair it immediately. Hearing this, Tony looked down. I saw a crack more than 30 centimeters long and about 3 centimeters deep on the chest. It was almost destroyed and the Mark III would be scrapped. How can it be? You should know that this Mark III is made of special titanium alloy, and it cost him hundreds of millions of dollars in total. It is so strong that it can even withstand frontal fire from tanks. But now it was torn apart by the monster in front of it. Is that the pair of sickles? Before Tony could think about it, the little leader had come to his senses and looked at him fiercely. The next moment the other person's figure disappeared from the spot. Bang! Tony was a beat slow to react. Even when he saw the opponent rushing towards him, he still didn't have time to react and was knocked away again. After rolling on the ground for more than 10 times, Tony felt his head buzzing. No matter how strong the defense of Mark III is and how good its shockproof function is, he inside is just an ordinary person after all. 2 consecutive tumblings almost gave him a concussion. Jarvis controlled the Mark III to take off. Because he was afraid that the monster would continue to attack and he would not be able to control Mark III, he chose to hand over control to Jarvis. Yes, Mr. Stark. And Jarvis did not disappoint his expectations. When the monster rushed over again, he immediately controlled the Mark III to soar into the sky and flew to a height of 100 meters. Hiss! The little boss looked at Tony flying up and could only make the roar of a monster. After a while, his back began to bulge, then cracked, revealing 2 transparent insect wings. The biggest feature of the modified C2 virus is that it will passively or actively choose the direction of evolution according to the needs of the host. Of course, this kind of evolution is irreversible, so no matter what it looks like, it will only continue to evolve in the future and will not turn back into humans. At this time, the little boss is going through the pupa stage and is evolving towards insect genetic response. Tony, who was high in the air, immediately noticed this situation. "Oh my god, what kind of monster is this? It can even grow wings." Jarvis' voice continued. "Mr. Stark, I suggest you either flee now or attack." Hearing this, Tony's eyes flickered a few times. "Jarvis, can my armor-piercing missiles kill this monster?" Based on the existing data, there is about a 71% chance of killing the monster. Tony immediately became excited when he heard that the chances were so high. "What are you waiting for? Launch now." He just raised his hand, and then a mini missile about 20 centimeters long and 4 centimeters in diameter popped out from his arm. Although this missile is small, it is actually very powerful. According to his experiments, this missile can easily destroy a heavy tank. "Die bug. Call out." As the missile was fired, it instantly hit the small leader who was in the pupa stage. I have to say that the little boss was careless. After all, reality is not a game, and the enemy will not wait for him when he uses his ultimate move. As he was still evolving, he was at his most vulnerable time, so he could only watch helplessly as the armor-piercing missile pierced his skin and entered his body. Next second, rumbled. There was an explosion, instantly blowing his body into pieces. A large amount of dark red liquid and a small amount of yellow liquid splashed around. "Oh yeah." Seeing the monster being killed by himself, Tony was suddenly excited. Then he flew down and took some samples of the monster's limbs, and then began to fly west. At this moment, he no longer had the desire to continue attacking the next dark element. After all, there were 2 deep cracks on the chest, which almost made the mark III scrapped. Chapter 7: Shorting Stock Prices. In the base 300 meters underground in the Umbrella Building, Manhattan, New York. Li Feng put his hands behind his back and looked at the experimental subjects in the laboratory. At this point, the experimental subject was no different from a monster. I saw that the subject had grown a new monster head which was gradually replacing the subject's original head, and the subject's original head moved to the original left chest. A strange object began to protrude from the broken skin on the right chest, and the new hands on the belly were basically detached from the body. At the same time, the subject's right eyeball became even bigger, and his fist evolved into a giant claw while his left hand and both feet began to turn into monster form. This is the second stage of the G virus. The Nemesis parasite takes over the dominant position in the experimental subject, generating a new bone structure, new skin, a new brain, and a new head. Whoa! The monster in the experiment twisted its body from time to time as if trying to wake up, but it would soon be injected with a sedative and then calm down. After looking for a while, Li Feng frowned slightly. No, although G3 entered the second stage faster than G2, it consumed more nutrient solution than G2, and its strength does not seem to be stronger than G2. Did the experiment fail? While he was still thinking, the voice of Red Queen suddenly rang in his ears. "Master, there is news about the actual combat effect of the C2 virus enhancer in the Middle East, but judging from the results, it is not very good." Li Feng, whose thoughts were interrupted by Red Queen, immediately came to his senses. "There are actual combat results so soon, is there any combat video?" Although the initial C1 virus can quickly strengthen the user, it can also turn people into insect-like monsters. This is unacceptable and unsellable to most people. The commercial value is so low that no one would buy it unless they were desperate. So Li Feng made improvements, suppressing some insect genes so that after injection, it would slowly strengthen the user without changing its appearance. Only when the host suffers a fatal attack is the virus's function fully unlocked, starting the strengthening of the insect's genes. This is the modified C2 virus, and it is also one of his best-selling products. Of course, he also has a more powerful version of the C3 virus, but it is not for sale at present because the C4 virus has not been developed. His first principle in doing business is to always keep something in reserve and not sell the latest product. There is a battle video, and the data transmission is starting now. After Red Queen's voice fell, a projection appeared in front of Li Feng, but the data was still loading. It seems that the next step is to optimize data transmission. The current time point is 8, and the general public is still using 3G networks. 13G networks will not appear on the market until 4. Although Li Feng has developed a speed almost as fast as the 4G network with the help of Red Queen, it still feels too slow. After a few minutes, the data was finally transmitted, and the projection began to play. The scene on the screen is the one where Tony is fighting the little boss. Watching the little leader fully activate the C virus and stimulate the insect's genes, Li Feng immediately began to judge and analyze the data. If I'm not mistaken, this is a mantis with genes, but it also retains most of its human nature. The strength increases to about 30 times, the speed reaches about 100 meters in 3 seconds, and the defense can withstand ordinary rifle bullets. But unfortunately, the battle was too short and his endurance could not be seen. Also, although the opponent retained his humanity, his intelligence seemed to have decreased a bit, and he actually started to evolve in front of the enemy. In this regard, the C3 virus has not been improved very well, and we can only try to improve it when developing C4 in the future. As the projection ended, Li Feng remembered something else. The current plot has reached the point where Iron Man goes to the Middle East to fight against the dark forces. It seems that Tony will soon come up with a new energy source. By then, the stock price of Stark Industries will rise quickly, even surpassing the previous level and then double or triple. Red Queen buy back all the shares of Stark Enterprises that were shorted. Now that he knew that the plot of the Marvel world was about to begin, he naturally would not forget that after Tony returned to the United States, the first thing he did was to close the weapons research department and then stop all arms transactions. This move caused Stark Enterprises' stock price to drop by more than half. So last month he asked Red Queen to short Stark Enterprises and made a lot of money. It is precisely because a large amount of funds were used to short Stark Enterprises and acquire Starship Corporation that his liquidity has been tight recently. Yes, Master. Just when Li Feng was about to continue studying the G3 virus, the experimental subject in the laboratory suddenly opened his eyes. Roar! With numerous needles inserted into his body and sedatives being injected continuously, the subject used his right giant arm to pull out the needles and then tore off the restraints on his body. When the experimental subject behaved abnormally, Red Queen noticed it immediately. Drip drip. As the alarm sounded, 4 fully armed security guards wearing tight black uniforms immediately appeared at the door. They were holding particularly sturdy rifles in their hands, and after observing for a while, they immediately aimed at the experimental subjects in the laboratory. Roar! At this moment, the experimental subject roared, raised his huge right hand, and punched the 30-centimeter thick bulletproof glass. With a bang, cracks suddenly appeared on the bulletproof glass. Seeing this, Li Feng, who was behind the bulletproof glass, immediately showed a look of slight interest. This bulletproof glass can even block sniper rifles with tens of thousands of joules, but it was cracked by just one punch. Obviously, the G3 virus is much more powerful than the G2 virus, and the experimental subject can still get rid of this large dose of sedatives, which shows that the body's resistance has also evolved. You have to know that this dose of sedative is the dose for 10 elephants. Boom! The subject hammered the bulletproof glass with his right hand again, which made the crack bigger and even spread to the entire piece of bulletproof glass. After being hammered for a while, the bulletproof glass could no longer withstand the impact and shattered. Roar! After the experimental subject let out a roar of victory, he immediately rushed towards Li Feng in front of him. When the security personnel saw this, they immediately pulled the trigger without hesitation. Da-da-da. A large number of bullets hit the experimental subject but did not even break the skin. The bullets only made a little indentation but bounced out immediately. The security guard's face suddenly changed when he saw this. You should know that the rifles in their hands are not ordinary rifles, but electromagnetic rifles with power similar to that of sniper rifles. Even Umbrella only has a small amount of this kind of weapon, and only the core security personnel in the base have it. But even this kind of weapon did not cause any harm to the experimental subjects. It was simply horrifying. Seeing that the experimental subject continued to rush forward and was about to rush in front of Li Feng, they threw down their rifles without hesitation, took out the black daggers and rushed forward. They are the enhancers of the T3 virus, and their own strength is not weak. Chapter 8 Experimental Subjects Riot. Even when faced with a terrifying and abnormal riot by the G3 test subjects, the security personnel still rushed forward without hesitation. Because Li Feng is here, and as die-hard fans, there is no way they will run away just because of danger. The next second, with a series of bang, 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 bang sounds, the 4 security guards were knocked away by the experimental subject one after another. The daggers made of special metal in their hands were also broken one after another. However, due to the enhancement of the T-virus, the security personnel were seriously injured but did not die. Roar! The experimental subject let out a roar of victory, then came to Li Feng with a look of hatred and bloodthirstiness. Although its brain is almost controlled by the parasite, it still has a little bit of its own consciousness and memory, and knows who the mastermind is. Facing the monster's roar, Li Feng was not afraid at all. Instead, he looked at the experimental subject with interest. It seems that you still have some consciousness. This experiment is not a complete failure. The subject slapped it away with his strong right hand. It wanted to kill the mastermind in front of it and avenge what had happened to it. But in the next second, the strong right hand stopped about 10 centimeters in front of Li Feng. No matter how hard the subject tried, he could not take the picture. Roar! The subject let out a cry of fear, and then his entire body began to slowly float up. At this moment, Li Feng's eyes could be seen flashing with blue light, and an extremely powerful mental force was surging around him. After a while, the subject suddenly felt a severe pain in his head, and then instantly lost all strength in his body. Seeing the experimental subject's head explode and the body fall powerlessly to the ground, Li Feng withdrew all his mental energy. Red Queen, prepare the next test subject. The time slowly came to the next morning. Tony finally drove the almost broken Mark III back to his villa. As soon as he returned to the villa, he lay down on the ground exhausted. Hoo-hoo, I'm freezing. Because of the 3 cracks on Mark III's chest, he could feel the cold wind constantly pouring into his body along the way. So his flying speed was not very fast along the way, and he only returned home now. He didn't know that it was precisely because he was flying so slowly and low that he was not detected by the US military radar, thus avoiding a misunderstanding. JRVIS, turn on the heater. After saying that, he tremblingly took the blanket from the other side and covered himself with it. The long-lost warmth slowly came over him, making him feel sleepy despite being cold and hungry. However, he still resisted the urge to sleep and took out a piece of minced meat. Jarvis, take this for testing. Yes, Mr. Stark. As the minced meat was taken away, Stark immediately closed his eyes and fell into sleep. I don't know how much time has passed. Stark felt his body being moved and slowly opened his eyes. Through the Mark III helmet, he saw Pepper looking at him anxiously while trying to take off his armor. However, because the Mark III is an intelligent mechanical structure, no one can open it except him. Tony, what's wrong with you? Answer me. Seeing the worry and tears in Pepper's eyes, Tony suddenly felt warm in his heart. Perhaps she is the only person in the world who cares about me the most. I am fine. After saying this, he struggled to get up. Fortunately, the energy of the Mark III all came from the reactor in his chest, so there was no need to worry about the danger of running out of energy. Otherwise, if the armor had no energy at this time, he probably wouldn't even be able to stand up. Pepper heaved a sigh of relief when she heard Tony's voice. God bless you, I'm so glad you're okay. After a while, Tony came to the mechanical arms in the basement, and with the help of them, he took off his armor. When Pepper saw Tony coming out, she immediately walked over with a nervous look on her face, touching his body and observing him carefully from head to toe. "Are you hurt? Do you feel uncomfortable anywhere?" Seeing Pepper's worried look, Tony's originally nervous and worried mood suddenly relaxed a lot. "I'm really fine, this suit of armor is pretty thick, it's okay." He originally wanted to say something comforting, but after seeing the huge crack on Mark II's chest, he couldn't say it. Reaching out and touching the crack on his chest, he was very glad that he killed the monster in time, otherwise if it hit him again, the Mark III would probably disintegrate. What kind of monster is that, with such great power and such a sharp blade? Galulu. At this moment, Tony's stomach made a protesting sound. He hadn't eaten anything until now and was now very hungry. "Jarvis, I want a burger." Tony, a wealthy man, has a not-so-good eating habit. "I just like to eat high-calorie burgers." "Okay, Mr. Stark." Just as Jarvis was about to place the takeout order, Pepper immediately shook her head. "No, I'll make you breakfast, you're so hungry, so don't eat a burger." In addition to being a secretary, she is also Tony's personal assistant, so she has the power to decide his morning. After saying that, she went upstairs to prepare breakfast. When Tony saw Pepper leave, the smile on his face disappeared instantly, and then he walked towards another laboratory with a serious face. There are many microscopes and various instruments here, and the minced meat he brought back has been sliced and is being placed under the microscope. "Jarvis, how's the inspection going? What did you find?" "Mr. Stark, I'm very sorry. After comparing more than 3,000 genes, I didn't find a genome that could be used as a reference." "You mean to say that this monster is not from our planet?" "No. The genes in the minced meat are 96% similar to humans, but also 94% similar to praying mantises. Other insects also have similarities of more than 80%. But the strange thing is that among the human genomes known so far, there has never been a human and insect genetic similarity of more than 70. You mean to say that this is a completely new species that combines humans and insects?" "I'm afraid so." "Has the X gene been discovered?" "Although the genes in front of us are very strange, this is the Marvel world after all, and mutants are a semi-public existence." So he immediately thought of mutants. "I have not found the X gene." "How can it be?" Hearing that there was no X gene, Tony frowned. Originally, his biggest guess was mutants. But now Jarvis tells him that no X gene has been found and the monsters are not mutants. So how did this monster appear? Could it be from an alien planet? Chapter 9, I have no choice. It is true that Tony is a genius, but he is a genius specializing in mechanics, not genetics. So after studying it for a while, we didn't find anything special about the genes of minced meat, but instead we were filled with doubts. Of course, if he wants to learn, he can quickly master genetic knowledge. But even if it's faster, it will still take several months. It seems that I have to find a biologist. "Tony, breakfast is ready." At this moment, Pepper's voice sounded outside the door. So Tony had to stop his research and go outside. Pepper, wearing a black low-cut dress with her hair tied up, was looking for him outside with a plate in her hand, like a good wife and mother. And on the plate was one of his favorite burgers. But when he got closer, he found that the burger was not filled with fried chicken or beef patties, but with ham slices and lettuce. Faced with this burger without cheese and beef patty, he didn't want to eat it, but looking at Pepper's expectant eyes, he took it and ate it silently. "Yeah, it tastes good." Seeing Tony wolfing down the food, Pepper smiled and felt very happy. "Being praised for my cooking skills by the person I like, even if I felt unhappy just now, it disappeared at this moment." "Don't be impatient, eat slowly. If you like it, I'll make another one for you." Hearing this, Tony paused slightly. "No, I'm full." This almost vegetarian burger did not give him the satisfaction brought by high calories, so it naturally could not satisfy him. "Okay." After a while, Pepper left with the tray. "Jarvis, create a new file, Mark IV." In fact, Tony was not going to eliminate Mark III so quickly, but after last night's battle he found that Mark III was still too weak. Neither armor nor attacks were enough to deal with that monster. If the monster hadn't suddenly stood still and grown wings, he would probably have had to escape in a panic. And until now, the weapons sold by Stark Enterprises have not been found, so stronger armor is needed to continue the action. Yes, Mr. Stark. Just when Tony was designing Mark IV, Pepper came over again. Tony, I think we have to have a talk. Where did you go last night? Why are you so badly injured? In fact, she came to the villa to find Tony after he stood her up last night. But I didn't find the other person, so I came again this morning. But I didn't expect to find Tony in such a miserable state, as if he had experienced some horrific battle. While preparing breakfast just now, she had been thinking calmly and finally decided that she must have a good talk with Tony. If it really doesn't work, she decided to leave Tony. Because she didn't want to wake up one day and find the man she loved lying in a pool of blood or never coming back, dead somewhere unknown. Tony closed the projection in front of him and turned to look at Pepper. Pepper, I need you to do something. Tony, you can't do this, we need to have a frank talk. I'll be honest with you, but I need you to do me a favor right now. Seeing Tony's solemn expression, Pepper finally gave in. What do you want me to do? I need you to go to my office in Stark Building, hack into the main computer and get all the recent shipping lists. After saying that, Tony took out a thumb-thick USB drive. Take this and use it to hack in. The shipping manifest may be in the administrative folder, or if not, it may be on a hidden disk, so just look for the one with the lowest number. After taking the USB drive, Pepper asked doubtfully, "What are you going to do if I get this data?" Tony was relieved when he saw Pepper agreed, and continued to design Mark IV. Someone has been making a deal behind the scenes. I have to stop them, find our weapons, and destroy them. As soon as he finished speaking, he realized that he had said the wrong thing. Sure enough, when Pepper heard that it was such a dangerous thing, her eyes suddenly turned red. Tony, you know I'm willing to do anything for you, but if you keep going like this, I'll have to leave. Needless to say, she knew that if she wanted to destroy these weapons, it would not be a matter of just a few words but would require a battle, a life-and-death struggle. Just like what I saw this morning, maybe the next time I see Tony, he'll be a corpse. This made her feel very uncomfortable and panicked, so she decided to leave to warn Tony, hoping that it would only be this time. Tony immediately understood what Pepper meant, but his eyes remained firm. I will continue to do this in the future, no longer attend opening ceremonies, no longer do charity, and no longer sign documents always like this. This is my mission and responsibility, nothing more. As he spoke, he came in front of Pepper. Looking at the other person's heartbroken eyes, he felt a little shaken, but when he thought of Dr. Ethan who sacrificed himself for him, and the civilians who died under the weapons he made, his heart was filled with a great sense of responsibility. I must stop this. When Pepper saw Tony's determined look, she felt even more sad. She didn't want the other party to take risks or fight. She just wants a safe man, at least someone who won't die one day. After a while, she lowered her head, and the tears in her eyes could no longer be held back and fell. I quit. After saying that, he threw the USB flash drive in his hand onto the table next to him and walked towards the door. Tony felt a pain in his heart as he watched Pepper walk away with heavy steps. For so many years, you have been helping me sell weapons and earning ill-gotten gains from killing civilians. I want to atone for my sins now, but you want to quit doing it. Hearing this, Pepper turned around immediately. Killing civilians yourself, making ill-gotten gains. Because Tony didn't show her the photo of Gumira, she didn't know that the weapons produced by Stark Enterprises had actually been used to massacre civilians. Of course, she is not a complete novice. For someone who has reached this position and has been doing it for so long, it is impossible that she knows nothing. It's just that because there is no actual evidence, she has been pretending not to know. Now that Tony has laid it out in the open, it's a little hard for her to accept. You are committing suicide now, Tony, and I don't want to die with you. Seeing that Pepper really knew something, Tony sat down on the chair in disappointment and said with a self-deprecating look on his face, "I should have committed suicide to atone for my sins unless I have a reason to live." "I'm not crazy, Pepper. I just realized what I should do. I have no choice." When he thought about the huge harm that the weapons he made had caused to the world and the massacre of countless civilians, the morality and conscience in his heart were like ants, gnawing at his whole body. After hearing all this and looking at Tony's sudden burst of masculinity in front of her, Pepper finally fell. Hey. With a low sigh, she went back and picked up the USB drive. "I have no choice but you. Sometimes love always prevails in life." Chapter 10 Secret Deal. In Stark Tower, Obadiah was in the conference room, receiving a distinguished guest with a smile on his face. "Ms. Luna, I didn't expect you to come so early." Today Luna was wearing a formal white suit and a tight skirt, with her long golden hair tied up behind her head, making her look like a strong woman. At the same time, she had a professional smile on her face, giving people a very comfortable feeling. Facing such a beauty, even Obadiah, a veteran who had had countless lovers, was stunned. In the face of Obadiah's greetings and unscrupulous gazes, Luna still kept smiling. "Morning, have you got the design drawings?" Obadiah nodded and sat on the sofa, placing his hands on either side of the sofa and crossing his legs. "Have you got your stuff?" Luna nodded to the men around her. The subordinate immediately understood, took out the suitcase, placed it on the coffee table, and then opened it. There were 4 blue syringes lying quietly in the suitcase. Seeing the syringe, Obadiah immediately showed a look of slight interest. "Is this the famous T-virus from Umbrella? It looks pretty good." Seeing Obadiah stand up and go to get the syringe on the coffee table, Luna immediately reached out and closed the suitcase. "The design drawings of the robot." Hearing this, Obadiah smiled. "Don't worry, I'm a man of my words, I'm here." After saying that, he took out a USB flash drive from his arms and threw it on the coffee table. Luna took the USB drive and asked another subordinate to take the laptop, then inserted the USB drive and started checking. Seeing Luna's serious and careful look, Obadiah suddenly said jokingly, "You are a biochemical company and you can understand this." Hearing this, Luna said without even looking up, "Not bad. I learned a little bit of everything in order to stay by the boss's side." This is the truth. The reason why she became Li Feng's secretary was not just because of her beauty and loyalty. Around Li Feng, although there are no beauties more beautiful than her, there are many who are similar to her, and there are also many who are as loyal to her as her. But the reason why she was the only one who could become Li Feng's secretary was because of her ability and knowledge. You have to know that she is a top student who graduated from Harvard University and has a doctorate degree. "I won't say I'm proficient in everything, but I have learned some biology, physics, mechanics, electrical engineering, etc." Although the structure of the mechanical drawing in front of her looked very complicated because the design time was too short and many parts were very straightforward, she could still get a general idea. Of course, she is not a professional mechanical scientist. If she wants to study it in detail, she still needs to go back and see a professional. After a while, Obadiah saw Luna close the notebook and said proudly, "Well, although my Tony is a little naive, his research in mechanics is definitely one of the best in the world. I'm very proud of that." Looking at Obadiah's proud look, if Li Feng hadn't told Luna, she would have really thought that he had a good relationship with Tony. But it's also true that everyone who can climb to such a high position is a movie king or queen. Only a rich second generation like Tony, who has a good father, would be so naive. "Yes, it's similar to what my boss said. These 4 tubes of T2 virus enhancers are given to you." As she nodded, the subordinate next to her put down the briefcase. Obadiah immediately opened the briefcase impatiently, then took out a tube of blue injection and threw it directly to one of his men. "Try the effect." As expected of someone who has reached his current position, his courage and determination are far beyond that of ordinary people. If it were Tony, he would definitely conduct some research and testing before he dared to let others use it. When Obadiah's subordinate heard his boss's words, he rolled up his sleeves without hesitation, picked up the injection and injected it. As the blue T2 virus entered his body, he immediately felt a burning sensation, and then the veins all over his body began to bulge. Then the muscles in my body began to slowly become stronger. But soon he fell to the ground with a look of pain on his face, roaring loudly. When Obadiah saw this, his expression suddenly changed slightly and he looked at Luna unkindly. Seeing this, Luna simply said, "It is best to use the T2 virus with nutrient solution. Otherwise, the energy consumed by the enhancement will be difficult to support with the fat in his body alone." Hearing this, Obadiah nodded, and then asked other men to urgently bring nutrient solution. In fact, nutrient solution is also one of Umbrella's industries, but compared with the T virus, nutrient solution is something that is sold openly and has the functions of replenishing energy and replacing food. After a while, someone injected high-grade nutrient solution into the subordinate, and the subordinate was relieved of the pain caused by the strengthening. Luna saw that it was almost time, so she prepared to leave. "The deal is done, let's go now." Upon hearing this, Obadiah immediately smiled and said, "Haha, it's a pleasure to work with you. Would you like to consider coming to my place? I'll give you double your salary." Luna shook her head and left without answering. Looking at the other person's back, a cold light flashed in Obadiah's eyes, but after thinking about it, he finally gave up the idea of taking back the USB flash drive. This is out of fear of Umbrella. Last night in the car, Luna accurately told the story of how those dark elements in the Middle East obtained Tony's discarded blueprints and armor. He didn't believe it at first and thought the other party was fooling him, but he didn't expect that not long after he returned last night, he really received news from the Middle East. As for what happened later, of course, he went there to kill the person and brought back the blueprints and Mark I armor left by Tony. I've always heard that the military is secretly cooperating with Umbrella, and it seems that this is true. Otherwise, the other party's intelligence would not be faster than mine. The reason for this speculation is that his cooperation with the Middle East 10 Rings gang is actually secretly led by the military. Although the military's actions were very covert and were carried out through a third party, there was no way they could escape his sharp eyes. In fact, he also knew what the military meant, which was nothing more than to make the Middle East more chaotic so as to buy off some people and achieve some goals. And Umbrella was able to get the news faster than him. Doesn't this mean that the other party is also cooperating with the military? What? At this moment, his men roared and stood up. Seeing this, Obadiah no longer thought about Umbrella. "How are you feeling?" "Boss, I feel like I can kill a cow with one punch right now." Chapter 11 video leaked. Next, Obadiah conducted some simple tests on his men, including strength, agility, reaction speed, defense, and so on. He found that his subordinates' attributes in all aspects had improved a lot, with his strength increasing more than 10 times, making him almost like Superman. I also heard that Umbrella's T-virus enhancement potion will not exert all its effects immediately, but will continue to slowly strengthen afterwards. This also made him more satisfied. But unfortunately, Umbrella's strengthening potion is too expensive, otherwise I would have given each of my subordinates one. After saying this, he picked up the syringe and prepared to give himself an injection. But just then, a man came to the meeting room. Boss Pepper came to the company and went to Stark's office. Hearing this, Obadiah could only put down the injection temporarily and walk out of the meeting room. Although he was wary of this woman, he wanted to make her his subordinate. After all, the other party's ability to do things and vision are indeed very good. Moreover, most of his contacts with the military depend on this woman, so he doesn't want to fall out with Pepper unless it is absolutely necessary. On the top floor of Stark Building, this is Tony's office. At this time, Pepper was carrying a handbag, walking towards the computer desk like a guilty thief, looking back at the office door from time to time. After arriving at the desk, she immediately turned on the computer, and the password input interface appeared. So she inserted the USB drive Tony gave her without hesitation, and as the password was cracked, she began to check the files. As she looked through the documents one by one, she suddenly saw the drawings and information of a mecha. District 16, Obadiah, what are you doing? Before opening the next folder, she watched a video. It was the video of the Dark Forces kidnapping Tony. But the dark elements inside spoke the language of the Middle East, so she couldn't understand them. But after the dark gangs kidnapped Tony, they did not release any video to the public or demand a ransom. So she immediately entered the command and started real-time translation. You didn't say that the person we were asked to assassinate was Tony Stark. Hearing this, Pepper was shocked. Oh my goodness. At this time, the video continues. Obadiah, you must pay for your lies and deception. The price of assassinating Tony Stark has now increased. Hearing this, Pepper quickly began to copy the video, including the 16th zone and all transaction records, etc. Oh, how should I deal with this matter? Hearing the sound, Pepper was so frightened that her whole body trembled, and then she looked towards the door in horror. I don't know when, Obadiah stood outside the door and then walked in. When she saw that Obadiah did not look fierce but just calm, she immediately came to her senses and realized that the other party did not know that she had discovered the video. This made her feel relieved, but as she looked at the file being copied in front of her, all kinds of thoughts flashed through her mind. First of all, he must not be discovered, otherwise, according to Obadiah's methods, he would definitely die. Secondly, you must copy this document and give it to Tony. At this moment, Obadiah slowly walked to the wine cabinet, poured himself some wine, and then smiled at Pepper. I know how you feel, Pepper. Tony is selfish like that, causing a lot of trouble and then leaving you to clean up the mess. Seeing this, Pepper carefully covered the USB drive with newspaper while the other party was pouring the wine and not looking at her, then smiled in response. At this time, Obadiah poured the wine and walked towards Pepper. When Pepper saw that the file had been copied, she quickly clicked the mouse to put the computer into sleep mode. Then the computer screen instantly jumped to the screensaver screen. Obadiah saw the screensaver on the computer and didn't think much about it but continued with a serious face. You don't know how happy I was when Tony just came back. It's like seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. Hearing the other party acting in front of her, Pepper felt a chill in her heart. It turns out that the person who has worked with me for so long is such a sinister villain. No wonder Tony had to come to the company himself to find the documents, otherwise he would have been sold out by such a villain and wouldn't know what was going on. But I understand now that Tony never really came back. His significant other was left in that cave, and he broke my heart. After saying this, he looked heartbroken. His words clearly meant he was going to break up with Tony. And in his mind, he already had a plan and idea to kill Tony, so he wanted to test Pepper's attitude and reaction. If the other party's answer satisfies him, he doesn't mind killing Tony and letting the other party continue to work. But if the other party's answer does not satisfy him, then after killing Tony, the other party must be driven away. If it were in the past, Pepper would not have thought much about what Obadiah said, but after watching the video, she felt a flash of fear in her heart. He's going to take action against Tony. However, as a strong woman, she forced herself to calm down and smiled. He's a man with multiple personalities, he's been through a lot, I believe he will get better. Hearing this, a cold light flashed in Obadiah's eyes. The other party's meaning was very clear, he rejected my invitation. But this is a society ruled by law after all, and many people have seen Pepper coming here, so now is not the time to take action. After quickly weighing the pros and cons in his mind, Obadiah took a sip of his wine and nodded. You're a rare and wonderful woman, Tony doesn't know how lucky he is. Hearing this, Pepper breathed a sigh of relief, because she knew that she survived. Thank you, thank you. The first thank you is for the other party's grace of not killing you, and the second thank you is for the other party's compliment. I think I should go back. After saying that, Pepper unplugged the USB drive while picking up the newspaper, then left her seat and walked towards the door. As Obadiah watched Pepper leave, he always felt something was wrong. So he asked tentatively, "Is that today's newspaper?" Hearing this, Pepper was stunned for a moment, but her good psychological quality and memory allowed her to answer immediately. Of course. Obadiah walked over suspiciously and looked Pepper up and down carefully, but there seemed to be nothing wrong. "Lend me the newspaper." "Can." After picking up the newspaper and taking a look, he found nothing suspicious. Obadiah suddenly felt that he was too suspicious and anxious. But watching Pepper walk out of the door, he was still a little worried, so he warned, "Be careful." Chapter 12 Arc Reactor. After walking out of the office, Pepper looked at the USB drive in her hand and immediately breathed a sigh of relief. But it wasn't safe yet, so she quickly walked down the stairs. And in the office, Obadiah opened Tony's computer, exited the screensaver, and saw the copied files. This immediately made him angry. Pepper must have known everything. So he immediately walked out of the office, came to the corridor, and saw Pepper leaving anxiously. Just when he was about to call his men to stop the other party, he saw a SHIELD agent appear and walk with Pepper. He remembered that the other person's name seemed to be Coulson, and his rank in SHIELD was not low. Damn! After a burst of low curses, he immediately walked towards the laboratory. Tony and Pepper may not know about the SHIELD department yet, but as the de facto manager of Stark Enterprises, how could he not know about it with his extensive network of contacts? SHIELD is the department of the Security Council that specializes in dealing with supernatural matters. Its strength and power are so great that even the US military has to give it some face. The only chance now is his own mecha, Iron Overlord. As long as Iron Overlord's research is successful, the military will definitely protect him. Even if Iron Monger's research fails, he still has one last way out, which is Umbrella. However, when he thought of the conditions Luna proposed last night, he felt embarrassed. "Forget it, I won't go to Umbrella unless it's absolutely necessary." In the top floor office of Umbrella. At this time, Li Feng was holding a coffee cup, sitting in the boss chair, leisurely looking at the report projected in front of him. At the beginning of the morning, Hong Hu started selling orders in the stock market, and a large amount of funds naturally flowed into the account. This time, Red Queen used nearly $10 billion to short Stark Enterprises and leveraged it 5 times. Now the share price of Stark Enterprises has dropped to about 1/3 of its original price. In other words, if he could sell all his short positions at the current price, he could earn about $35 billion. Yes, although it is only the price of 350 C2 viruses, this money is essentially free money, and the C2 virus is not available for sale at any time. With these $35 billion, the plan to acquire Starship can go one step further. But after thinking about it, he was not in a hurry to buy Starship Corporation's shares because he had a better idea. That is to buy Stark shares at a low price and become a shareholder of Stark Enterprises. Because he knew that after Stark Enterprises' arc reactor was officially put into use, the stock price would reverse and even rise better than before. In other words, Stark Enterprises' stock price is now almost at its lowest point. Dong dong. At this time, there was a knock on the door. "Come in." As the door opened, Luna was seen walking towards me step by step, twisting her hips and wearing high heels. "Boss, the information about the armor has been obtained." After saying that, she placed a stack of printed materials in front of Li Feng. Li Feng ignored Luna's proud pair of weapons, put down the fragrant coffee, picked up the document, and began to look through it carefully. This is the design drawing of the Mark I that Tony made using some scrap metal when he was trapped in the Middle East. Although there is something here, it is not very profound. After all, the problem of speeding and overloading has not been solved, nor are there any technologies such as freezing, shock absorption, energy, palm cannon, etc. Of course, there are some techniques here that he doesn't have, and Red Queen can learn them. After looking at it for a while, he nodded with satisfaction. "Yes, as long as we solve the energy problem, we can build an iron army." What did Obadiah say about the data and design drawings of the arc reactor? Since he knew that Iron Man appeared, he naturally wouldn't do nothing. But he also knew that Tony was not easy to approach, so he let Luna approach Obadiah. Although it requires some cost, it is better than Tony, a guy who is destined to be uncooperative. Hearing about the arc reactor, Luna could only shake her head helplessly. "I'm very sorry, boss." Obadiah takes the arc reactor very seriously and has no intention of negotiating. Li Feng didn't say anything after hearing this. He just picked up the cooled coffee on the desk and drank it slowly. Then he raised his head, looked at Luna, who looked unwilling, and said confidently, "Don't worry, he will agree to it in the evening. You can go down." Luna had no doubt about Li Feng's words. She just nodded and went out. As the office returned to silence, Li Feng turned his chair and looked out the window. At this time, the sun outside was gradually setting, and night was about to come. He knew that the decisive battle between Obadiah and Tony would begin soon. Red Queen dispatched the USS Second Action Team to the Stark Energy Plant and stand by. USS stands for Umbrella Rapid Reaction Security Service, which is a secret force formed by Li Feng. Its members are all retired special forces from various countries. At the same time, they have all been strengthened by the T3 virus. They are a stronger and more professional force than security personnel. Even within Umbrella Corporation, only a few people knew about this secret force. The highest person in charge of this force is naturally Li Feng. "Yes, master." After a while, Li Feng stood up, looked at the people getting off work below, with the corners of his mouth slightly raised. "Things are starting to get interesting. Red Queen, after selling your short positions, buy up all the shares of Stark Enterprises." "Yes, master." As the sun slowly sets, it is night time. At the Stark Energy Plant. At this time, Pepper, Coulson, and 4 other SHIELD agents were entering the factory. This factory building houses a new large-scale arc reactor and is the new energy factory of Stark Enterprises. Its daily power generation is estimated to be around 10 billion kilowatts, which is almost equivalent to the Three Gorges Dam. The reason why it is said to be expected is that the large arc reactor was only installed not long ago and is still in the testing phase and has not yet been officially put into use. The arc reactor is also the reason why Tony dared to close the weapons research and development and production department, and even dared to say that he would no longer sell weapons in the future. As for why it is a large arc reactor, it is because Tony will not hand over the technology of miniaturizing the arc reactor. District 16 here. After walking for a while, Pepper led everyone to Area 16 in the factory. According to the information she saw at noon, Obadiah was preparing to build a battle armor in Area 16. But when she stepped forward and swiped her work card twice, she found that the access control system was lit red. "Obadiah has revoked my privileges, the door won't open." Hearing this, Coulson just nodded calmly and stretched out his hand. His men immediately understood, took out a small bomb and stuck it on the door. "Please step back." Amid a series of beep-beep sounds, a slight explosion soon occurred, blowing open the door lock of Area 16. Chapter 13: Iron Man vs. Iron Monger. Boom! When Pepper and the agents of SHIELD were blowing up the door, Obadiah, who was debugging Iron Monger in Area 16, immediately heard the explosion. He immediately knew that the enemy had arrived. "Damn it, hurry up." So he hurriedly climbed up the ladder and placed the arc reactor number 2 he got from Tony into the 3-meter-tall Iron Monger's chest. When he came to Area 16 to check on Iron Monger at noon, he found that his scientists had no way to miniaturize the arc reactor, so he had to go to Tony's house and take the arc reactor from Tony's chest. As for Tony, he should be dead by now because he has no arc reactor. Therefore, the enemies that come now will definitely kill me. Thinking of this, he jumped off the ladder, entered the command on the computer, then climbed up the ladder and climbed into the Iron Overlord. In fact, according to the original plot, he should have had plenty of time to debug Iron Monger. But when he came back from Tony's house in the afternoon, he was delayed a little and used the T2 virus, so his schedule was a little tight now. Just as Obadiah jumped into Iron Monger and started the robot, Pepper walked in with the SHIELD people. After seeing Iron Monger, Pepper immediately pointed at him nervously and excitedly. "That's it, shut it down." Upon hearing this, Coulson raised his pistol without hesitation. "Mr. Obadiah." Before he could finish, Obadiah drove Iron Monger forward and slapped Coulson away with one palm. Seeing this, the other four agents immediately pulled the trigger. Bang, bang, bang. But how could a Glock 9 with a caliber of only 26 possibly penetrate the 30mm armor of the Iron Overlord, which is made of gold titanium alloy? The bullets didn't even have the chance to leave craters on them, and those agents were shot away one after another by Iron Overlord controlled by Obadiah. When Pepper saw that the situation was not good, she immediately ran away. Because Iron Monger was too big, he was quickly stuck in the door, allowing Pepper to escape. At the same time, in the sky above New York, a golden and red figure is flying quickly. It turned out that Tony had changed into Arc Reactor Number 1, put on the Mark III armor with a crack on the chest, and flew towards the Stark factory. In fact, he was almost dead after Obadiah took away the arc reactor from his chest at noon. However, with his strong willpower, he went to the underground laboratory and got the first-generation arc reactor and installed it on his chest, thus preventing metal fragments from flowing into his heart. When he was assassinated by the 10 Rings gang in the Middle East, a bomb produced by Stark Industries fell not far from him. Although the violent explosion did not kill him immediately, it left hundreds of tiny metal fragments in his body. Because there were no conditions for surgery at the time, Dr. Ethan, who treated him, simply used a magnetic field device to firmly absorb the metal fragments and prevent them from flowing into his heart. This is also the reason why he installed a small arc reactor on his chest. In addition to providing energy for the armor, it is also to absorb these metal fragments. Jarvis, how long can the energy of the first-generation arc reactor last? The first generation of arc reactors were manufactured in caves in the Middle East. The workmanship was very crude, the utilization rate of palladium was not high, and the energy recovery was very slow, so it has been eliminated by him. Its energy is currently less than 48%, making it unsuitable for long-range sustained flight. He had only flown a few dozen kilometers or even less than 100 kilometers, but so much energy had been consumed, which made him worried. You have to know that he used the second-generation arc reactor and flew directly to the Middle East without even taking a rest. I understand, continue reporting. Put me through to Pepper. A moment later, he dialed Pepper's number through the built-in access system. Pepper. At this time, Pepper, who had already run to the gate of the energy plant, answered the phone and was immediately delighted when she heard Tony's voice. Tony, are you okay? I'm fine. Before Tony could finish, Pepper immediately said anxiously, Obadiah, he's crazy. I know. He built a big robot. It's dangerous where you are, get out of there immediately. At this moment, the ground behind Pepper cracked. Click. I saw the Iron Overlord, more than 3 meters tall, crawling out from the ground. Pepper turned around and saw this and was stunned. Obadiah, who was driving the Iron Overlord, looked at the woman in front of him and said coldly, Pepper, I wanted to let you go, but you disappoint me so much. As he finished speaking, he raised his right hand, and the Gatling gun on it began to slowly rotate. At this critical moment, Tony finally arrived and rushed towards Obadiah from high in the sky. Stop! Hearing the voice, Obadiah turned the gun without hesitation and pointed it at Tony. Zzzz. A burst of intensive gunfire hit the Mark III but did not cause any effective damage. Tony immediately rushed to the street outside, holding Obadiah's Iron Monger. So the two began to fight continuously. But they didn't notice that 6 fully armed figures wearing devil masks appeared around them at some point. However, looking at the two robots fighting, they did not take action immediately but began to report to their superiors. Boss, this is Team Omicron, we see 2 robots fighting. Yes, for professionals like them, at this moment, Tony and Obadiah were more like fighting than battling. After all, one is a company manager and the other is a scientific researcher. They don't have any combat skills and they rely entirely on the armor on their bodies to fight, or rather, to fight. The captain of the Omicron team expressed contempt for this. At the same time, in Umbrella's office, Li Feng naturally also received the news from the Omicron team, so he asked Red Queen to start projecting the battle scenes. After watching for a while, he shook his head and turned off the projection. It was indeed a fight, but it didn't feel like a battle at all. It was obvious that they could simply attack the weak points in the joints or the energy points in the chest to cripple or even kill their opponent, but the two of them chose to attack the opponent's strongest defenses. In this regard, he could only say that professional matters should be left to professionals. Just then, another voice came from the headset. "Boss, this is the Alpha team. We have arrived at the door of Tony's villa, but we met some people." Hearing this, Li Feng immediately asked Hong Hu to start projecting. 3 people, 1 black and 2 white, appeared at the gate of Tony's villa. It turned out to be them. Chapter 14 Security Forces. The full name of USS is Umbrella Rapid Reaction Security Force. Li Feng has formed a total of 4 teams of this type. The first team is called Alpha, and its main responsibility is to recover important technologies and assets of the Umbrella Group, or secretly plunder important technologies and assets of hostile companies. The second team is called Omicron and is responsible for assassinating senior executives of rival companies or politicians who are hostile to Umbrella. The third team is called Epsilon and they are responsible for protecting Umbrella's top brass. They are also the team that Luna brings with her whenever she goes out. The fourth team is called Zeta and it is mainly responsible for supporting the other 3 teams. It is similar to a reserve team. Each of these 4 team members has been injected with T-virus enhancement agents. They look like ordinary people on the outside, and in fact, it is not an exaggeration to say that they are little supermen. This time, in addition to sending the Omicron team to the Stark Energy plant, Li Feng also sent Alpha to Tony's villa. As for the reason, it is naturally to obtain the technology of miniaturized arc reactor. Although I don't know whether Tony has put the information in the villa, Tony is now unable to take care of himself, so this is undoubtedly the best opportunity. But I didn't expect that those guys from S.H.I.E.L.D. were so perceptive, or rather, they also wanted this technology. At this time, among the 3 people in front of Tony's luxurious villa, the leader was the black bald man, the director of SHIELD, Nick Fury. On Nick's left is a beautiful woman with long brown hair and a slim figure, a level 9 agent of SHIELD known as the Black Widow, Natasha Romanoff. On Nick's right was a beautiful woman with long golden hair. Her figure and appearance were no less beautiful than Natasha's, but Li Feng had no idea who she was, because he had never seen it. But this is normal. The Marvel Universe he traveled through was roughly the same as the Marvel Cinematic Universe 199,999, but it had mutants, the Fantastic Four, and so on. So it wouldn't be surprising if a few unrecognizable characters appeared. At the same time, Nick looked solemnly at the 12 fully armed men who appeared in front of him. Where did these guys come from? It was obvious that these people were well-trained, even comparable to their S.H.I.E.L.D. combat agents. It was unknown which force they belonged to. And it looks like he has bad intentions. Natasha whispered beside him, "Director, are we still going to search Tony's villa?" After thinking about it, Nick shook his head. Never mind. In fact, Li Feng guessed it right. The reason Nick brought people here this time was actually to find the technology for the arc reactor. However, unlike Li Feng who wanted a smaller one, he wanted a larger one. After all, S.H.I.E.L.D. doesn't have any special requirements for miniaturization, so the size difference isn't that big. Moreover, large size has its own advantages such as high energy output, stable energy output, and so on. Although miniaturization makes it easier to carry, it requires higher standards in materials and technology and is also more expensive. After thinking about it, Nick took out the walkie-talkie. "Hill, I need backup." "Yes, Chief, send someone over right away." A few minutes later, 3 helicopters appeared in the sky and more than a dozen fully armed SHIELD agents jumped out. For a time, the situation was extremely tense. When Li Feng in the Umbrella office saw this scene, he decisively ordered the Alpha team to retreat. As the saying goes, a wise man never suffers a loss in front of him. There is no need to conflict with SHIELD here. And if you want to obtain the arc reactor technology, you don't have to take it from Tony's house. At the Stark Energy plant. At this time, Tony and Obadiah had already fought from the ground to the sky. Tony used the low temperature and low oxygen environment at high altitude to make Obadiah's Iron Monger lose power, falling from the sky and crashing into the factory. However, due to insufficient energy, he could only activate the emergency backup power and then slowly fell from the sky. Bang. Even with the magical shock-absorbing device, Tony felt as if his body was falling apart and was a bit overwhelmed. However, because he was worried about Pepper, he immediately called out to her after he was safe. Pepper! Pepper, who was anxiously waiting for news, heard the voice and immediately said excitedly and worriedly, "Tony, oh God, are you okay? My energy is almost exhausted. I need to take off my armor before I can go down." At this point, Tony thought Obadiah had fallen to his death, so he began to take off the right hand of his armor. But in the next second, Obadiah flew over in the Iron Monger. "It's a good idea, but you still underestimate me." To be honest, the Iron Monger he manufactured was too recent and had not been tested in various extreme environments, so he suffered a great loss. However, the design of Iron Monger was not simple. He activated the flight power at the last moment so he did not fall into pieces. Ding! Obadiah controlled Iron Monger and knocked Tony's Iron Man away with one punch. Iron Man immediately flew back and punched Iron Monger. So the two of them started punching each other back and forth. It's no wonder that the captain of the Omicron team would complain about the two of them. The two men were using the most advanced armor, yet they were still fighting like primitive men. It would be fine if they were good at fighting, but the two of them had no attacking skills at all, they just punched each other. However, Obadiah had the upper hand in the battle at this time. After all, Iron Monger is more than 3 meters tall, while Iron Man is only about 1.8 meters tall. In addition, Iron Monger uses the second-generation arc reactor, while Iron Man only uses the first-generation arc reactor. Whether in terms of size or energy, Iron Monger has the advantage. But Obadiah was only a businessman, not a warrior, so even if he had the advantage, he didn't know how to end the battle. So after fighting for a while, he chose to use brute force and directly hugged Tony, wanting to use the advantage of Iron Monger's strength to strangle the other party to death. Tony, who was hugged, immediately began to panic. Jarvis checked the status of the weapons. The palm cannon is ineffective and the missiles are ineffective. Then use a decoy bomb. As densely packed small decoy bombs were fired one after another, Iron Overlord immediately lost sight and loosened his arms. Tony took the opportunity to hide aside. "Pepper, this won't work, I can't beat him." "Tony, are you okay?" "Listen, I have an idea. It's to overload the ARC's reactor and blow the roof off." "What are you up to?" "It wasn't me who did it, it was you." Hearing this, Pepper was stunned. But she nodded immediately. "What do you want me to do?" "You go to the center console, open all the circuits and turn off all the fuses." "Okay, I've entered the plant and am turning on all the circuits." "That's right, wait for my signal and activate the arc reactor." Chapter 15 takes action. Obadiah regretted again that the Iron Monger was made in such a hurry that there wasn't even an infrared ray, and he couldn't find the person. And at this moment, Tony finally had a little wisdom to match it. He suddenly appeared from behind Obadiah, grabbed the wire on the back of Iron Overlord's head, and pulled it out. This immediately caused Iron Monger to lose the outside view, as well as the aiming system and so on. So Obadiah, getting impatient, grabbed Iron Man's head from behind and threw it forward. The huge inertia caused Iron Man's helmet to fall off, revealing Tony inside. Because there was no video footage, Obadiah had to open the cabin of Iron Monger. But at this moment he had a confident expression on his face, and his eyes were full of mockery and complacency. "I don't really like this iron thing, Tony. But I have to admit that this armor is really nice." After crushing Iron Man's helmet with force, he threw it in front of Tony. At this time, as a villain, he activated his passive skills. Before defeating the protagonist, you must talk nonsense for a while and then let the protagonist turn the tables. "You've finally outdone yourself, Tony. Your father would be proud of you." Pepper, who was in the factory, had already turned on all the power supplies and turned off the safety devices. "Everything is ready, Tony, get off the roof." The arc reactor began to emit blue light and electric current continued to flow out because the electricity it produced could not be released and the safety device would not stop automatically. At this time it is like a huge bomb, constantly charging energy. However, this point was obviously taken into consideration when the arc reactor was built, so a large amount of electricity was guided to the ground through ground wires. At this time, Obadiah on the roof raised his right hand and saw the Gatling gun on Iron Monger spinning continuously. Zzz. Dense bursts of bullets were fired instantly. However, due to the damage to the aiming system and the fact that he was not a professional, he naturally drew the human body. It doesn't even count as a depiction of the human body because it's so off-center. Pepper, who heard the noise below, immediately shouted Tony's name in worry. Obadiah then put away his right hand on the roof. "That's ridiculous, Tony. You wanted to rid the world of weapons, but ended up inventing the most powerful weapon the world has ever seen. But now, I am going to kill you with the weapon you made." After saying this, a confident smile appeared on his face, and he raised his left hand, revealing a small rocket. Swoosha-boom. However, after firing 2 rounds, the small rocket went astray again. So he had to step forward and get closer to Tony. "You may have destroyed my aiming system, but what about this?" Tony saw Obadiah coming and immediately shouted, "Pepper, cut the ground wire." Upon hearing this, Pepper immediately took off the button, cutting off the last protection of the Fontaine reactor and disconnecting the ground wire. Sizzle boom. The powerful electrical energy had no way to vent and immediately turned into an extremely powerful energy shockwave shooting upwards. Obadiah and Tony, who were on the roof, were instantly hit by the powerful energy. However, they were protected by armor and the energy was rushing towards the sky, so they were not turned into charcoal. They were just numb all over from the electricity and were completely unable to move. After a while, the energy of the Fontaine reactor was released and the emergency plan was automatically activated, cutting off all operations and stopping the generation of electricity. Tony, who had been electrocuted, immediately fell from the roof. Unlike the plot, Obadiah still had some consciousness at this time and did not fall with the enemy because he had been injected with the T-virus to strengthen himself so he could withstand the current. "Oh Tony, it looks like your plan has failed." With a slight smile, he raised the small rocket in his left hand and aimed it downwards. At this time, Pepper had already run to Tony's side, and seeing that Tony had lost consciousness, she was very anxious. "Tony, are you okay?" "Pepper, let's be a couple on the run with your Tony." Just as Obadiah was about to launch a rocket, suddenly a sharp arrow flew across the sky and hit the joint of Iron Monger's left hand. With a click, Iron Overlord's left hand was instantly stuck and unable to move. Turning his head, he found that 30 meters to his left, a man with a bow and arrow appeared at some point. "Who are you?" In response to Obadiah's question, Barton did not say anything, but just raised his bow and arrow and aimed at the other party. At this time, Obadiah's hatch was wide open. As long as he got the order from above, he would be sure to shoot him in the head with 1 arrow. Because he is Clint Barton, nicknamed Hawkeye, a level 7 agent of. And he didn't come alone this time. Soon, Coulson limped to Barton with 7 or 8 agents. "Dude, luckily you came in time, I almost died." He had good physical fitness and did not die after being knocked away by Obadiah, but was only slightly injured. "I think you'd better take someone down to check. Tony's condition is not good." Coulson glanced at Obadiah not far away and nodded. I'll leave this to you. Seeing Coulson preparing to go down, Obadiah immediately raised his right hand and Gatlin kept spinning. But at this moment, a sharp arrow shot over. Swoosh, ding. The arrow just got stuck in the Gatling gun and stopped spinning instantly. Seeing this, Obadiah was furious. Damn you, you. Just as he ejected the small missile from behind and prepared to fire it, Patton shot another arrow which pierced his ear. Ding! I advise you not to move, otherwise I don't know where the next arrow will hit. Seeing the arrow near his ear, Obadiah's anger suddenly disappeared and cold sweat flowed down his forehead. After all, he is just a businessman, not a professional fighter. If the arrow had been a little off, he would have been dead. But when he saw Coulson going down to find Tony, he felt unwilling again. If this continues, by the time Tony recovers, I'll be finished. First of all, he will definitely be stripped of his qualifications on the board of directors and then thrown into jail, saying goodbye to his current life forever. If Tony was more cruel and had an accident, he wouldn't even have a chance to go to jail alive. What should I do? As Obadiah was getting anxious, 6 armed men followed him to the roof. Mr. Obadiah, Miss Luna has a deal she wants to discuss with you. Obadiah was immediately delighted when he heard Luna's name. No matter what the deal is, as long as you can kill Tony, everything is negotiable. Chapter 16: Obadiah's Compromise. After hearing what Obadiah said, the captain of the Omicron team simply said, "Our Miss Luna wants to talk to you, please answer the phone." Because they were in the middle of a battle, Obadiah shut down all phone communications. Hey Ms. Luna, yeah, I promise you, as long as you let your men cooperate with me to kill Tony. No, why? As long as you cooperate with me to kill Tony, I can not only give you the design drawings of the Fontaine reactor but also give you shares of Stark. You said S.H.I.E.L.D. doesn't agree. Where does S.H.I.E.L.D. come from? Just as he was about to say the word S-H-I-E-L-D, Obadiah calmed down and looked at Coulson, who had already walked to Tony's side in the factory below. Coulson is an open agent of S-H-I-E-L-D, and he knows that basically all matters, big or small, are handled by him. And anyone who can be on good terms with Coulson must be a member of. In other words, the person who shot him with the arrow just now was also from S-H-I-E-L-D. There are other men in black around, needless to say they are also from S.H.I.E.L.D. This all indicates one thing, that is, S.H.I.E.L.D. has intervened in the conflict between him and Tony. Thinking of this, his heart suddenly turned cold. He really couldn't understand why S.H.I.E.L.D., which had always been high and mighty and never interfered in the affairs of ordinary people, would intervene in the internal affairs of Stark Enterprises. Why does your S.H.I.E.L.D. want to intervene in this matter? Don't you also have a 5% stake? Obviously, I am the one who can lead Stark Enterprises to a better future and help you make more money. Yes, 5% of Stark Enterprises, S-H-I-E-L-D. In fact, S.H.I.E.L.D. owns more than 5% of Stark Enterprises. It also owns some shares in other top companies and groups. Otherwise, how could S.H.I.E.L.D. possibly support such a big business relying solely on the little money given by the Security Council? Unfortunately, Obadiah was destined to be disappointed. Patton completely ignored his words and still pointed the longbow at him, but his eyes were somewhat distracted to the members of the Omicron team. As members of the Omicron team, their equipment is quite good. Bulletproof vests, bullet bags, tactical backpacks, devil masks, tactical helmets, and binocular night vision goggles. Their level of armament is even better than that of S.H.I.E.L.D. agents and is comparable to that of some Special Forces soldiers. Moreover, he had never seen the style of weapons in their hands before. They were larger than ordinary rifles and should be specially made rifles. You finally woke up. Oh, thank God, Tony, I'm so glad you're okay, woo-woo. After the situation was deadlocked for a while, Obadiah saw Tony waking up below and heard Pepper crying with joy, and he immediately knew that his plan had completely failed. So he said into the microphone, "You win, I listen to you." On the secretary's desk outside of the top-floor office at Umbrella. Luna smiled as she drank her coffee. Then she picked up the folder on the table and held it to her chest, then pushed open the door behind her in her high heels. "Boss, Obadiah agreed to our request as you expected." Li Feng, who was reading documents, didn't even raise his head when he heard Luna's words, but just nodded lightly. Understood. It seemed as if he was very sure that his plans would never fail. Seeing how busy he was, Luna put the folder on the desk, then came behind him and pinched his shoulders. "Boss, I work overtime so late every day, what should I be rewarded with?" Feeling Luna's restless little hand, Li Feng finally withdrew his energy from thinking. "Didn't I promise to go out with you last time? What do you want this time?" Hearing this, Luna smiled slightly, then turned around and sat on Li Feng, hugging his neck with both hands. "I want you to stop working so hard and have a good rest." Feeling the soft and boneless body in his arms, Li Feng gave a bitter smile. "Once I obtain the arc reactor in Starfleet Corporation, I will naturally have a good rest. The future multiverse crisis is like a sword of Damocles hanging over my head. I have no time to rest." After saying this, he touched the smooth black stockings with one hand and hugged the slender waist with the other hand. Then how long do we have to wait? Otherwise, let's take a break now." As soon as she finished speaking, Luna kissed Li Feng on the chin and her hands began to move naughtily. Seeing this, Li Feng used his mental power to lift up the folder that the other party had just taken and began to flip through it, while he reacted instinctively with both hands. "Starship has already acquired 5%, it looks like the listing has been announced." "Okay, don't look at this anymore." The next morning, in the VIP ward of Columbia Hospital in New York. At this time, Tony was lying on the hospital bed, holding a newspaper in both hands. "Iron Man, this name is interesting, but the word steel is not quite accurate. It is made of titanium alloy." Pepper, who was checking Tony's band-aid and wound, rolled her eyes when she heard this. "You still have the heart to think about these things? After Obadiah and the people from Umbrella left last night, there has been no news since then. I wonder what bad things they are planning." When Tony heard this, he put away the newspaper with a confident look on his face. "Pepper, don't worry, I own 39% of Stark Enterprises shares, and I will fire him at the board meeting this afternoon. Then charge him with murder, treason, and munitions smuggling, and make sure he's sent to jail." "Mr. Stark, I may disappoint you." Just then, Coulson pushed open the door and walked in. "What happened?" Tony frowned slightly. Coulson handed the document to Tony and continued, "Early this morning, the military announced that a prototype robot had gone berserk. It had nothing to do with Obadiah. Because Iron Monger did not fall into the arc reactor, there was no explosion and the incident was easily suppressed." Before Tony could say anything, Pepper immediately shouted angrily, "How could they do this?" She really didn't understand why the military favored Obadiah. "You have to know that Obadiah wanted to kill Tony last night, and as a partner of Stark Enterprises, the military actually favored Obadiah." This was really beyond her comprehension. Tony looked at the document in his hand and understood something from it. "They want the Mark II." Coulson nodded and said, "Yes, not only the Mark II, they also want the core technology of the arc reactor." There was one more thing he didn't say. That is, Tony's decision to close the Weapons Research and Development Department and stop selling weapons angered the military. "They are playing with fire. Obadiah is not a good person and he was walking with Umbrella last night." Because Umbrella saved Obadiah in Pepper's eyes, Umbrella also became an evil company. Perhaps it was because of Umbrella's intervention that the military agreed to protect Obadiah. After finishing speaking, Tony put down the documents in his hand, his eyes solemn. Chapter 17 Shareholders Meeting. The time soon arrived in the afternoon. Tony, wearing a straight suit and tie, slowly walked to the top floor of Stark Tower. After opening the door, I saw that the conference room was already full of people. These people are all shareholders and senior executives of Stark Enterprises, big and small. "Mr. Stark, are you okay?" "Hello, Mr. Stark." Mr. Stark is finally back. After a round of greetings, Tony took Pepper to the chairman's seat and Pepper sat on his left in the first seat. After looking around, Tony glanced at the watch on his left hand and found that it was already 2 o'clock. Is Obadiah not here yet? It seems that he does not plan to attend this board meeting. As soon as he finished speaking, the door of the conference room was pushed open again. Obadiah, a tall man, walked in with a bright smile on his face. Everyone, I'm very sorry that I'm a little late. Seeing the person who was once his closest relative appear, Tony didn't react much but just nodded lightly. But soon he noticed a blonde beauty behind Obadiah. Luna. Seeing that everyone was looking at her, Luna smiled very calmly. Hi everyone, my name is Luna. Pepper stood up at this time and said gloomily, This is the board of directors of Stark Enterprises. People who are not involved, please leave. Without waiting for Luna to speak, Obadiah winked at the shareholders and said, Let me introduce Luna next to me. She is the CEO of Umbrella and is here to attend the board meeting on behalf of Umbrella. I would like to remind you that Umbrella has already acquired 5% of Stark Enterprises shares. According to regulations, it does not need the chairman's consent to obtain the right to participate in the board of directors. As he finished speaking, the shareholders present stood up and applauded, expressing their welcome. Clap, clap, clap. Welcome Miss Luna to join our big family. I didn't expect Umbrella to also invest in it. Yes, you know Stark Enterprises is in a turbulent time right now. Just as Luna was about to take a seat, Pepper suddenly held up a tablet and asked, Why didn't I see Umbrella's listing announcement? The stock exchange didn't show any announcement either. After saying this, she looked at the other person with a puzzled look. In response to Pepper's questioning, Luna still had a smile on her face and slowly sat down in the seat belonging to the shareholder. These equity transactions were reached this morning, so the announcement has not come out yet. If Miss Pepper doesn't believe it, you can take a look at these documents. After she finished speaking, she put down the briefcase in her hand and took out documents one by one. Pepper looked at the equity transaction documents and still couldn't believe it and said, How is it possible? You can't possibly receive 5% of the equity in such a short time. Although Stark Enterprises is not as exaggerated as the trillions in the future, its market value is still $300 billion. Even if the stock price has dropped by 2/3 due to some things, it still has a market value of around $100 billion. 5% is $5 billion. Not to mention whether Umbrella has so much liquid funds, just acquiring so many shares from others is not an easy task. Hearing this, Luna raised her left eyebrow slightly with a half-smile on her face. I have to thank Mr. Stark for this. When Tony heard that this matter suddenly involved him, his brows slightly frowned. What does this have to do with me? Of course it is related. If you hadn't closed the weapons research department and terminated the transactions with the military, those fund companies, institutions and securities companies would not have transferred their shares to our umbrella group so readily. And it is still 10% lower than the transaction price in the secondary trading market. In fact, if the news about Stark Enterprises was better, it would have been impossible for Li Feng to buy 5% of Stark's shares so quickly and at a low price. But who is to blame for the series of problems that Stark Industries has encountered recently? The Weapons Research and Development Department was closed, the arms trade with the military was terminated, the arc reactor was delayed in opening, and a robot riot occurred. If these things happen to other companies, they would be a fatal blow. Although Stark Enterprises is huge, it cannot withstand such turmoil. So we can't blame Li Feng for moving so quickly. Tony and Pepper confirmed that Umbrella really had 5% of the shares. Their faces suddenly turned ugly and they had a bad feeling in their hearts. But they didn't take it too seriously and felt it was not a big problem. After all, they hold 39% of the shares while Obadiah only holds 12%. Even if Umbrella's 5% is added, it is only 17%. They still have a big advantage. But the faces of the other shareholders darkened. Because of these recent events, their assets have shrunk by 2/3. Currently, Stark's market value is around $100 billion and the shares they hold are not cheap. If they want to sell them at this time, they can only sell them below the market price like those fund companies, institutions and securities companies. Isn't this tantamount to asking for their lives? Thinking of this, some small shareholders looked at each other and nodded in tacit understanding. After some minor twists and turns, the shareholders' meeting officially began. And Pepper was still the first to attack. The first thing to do at this shareholders' meeting is to remove Obadiah from his position as CEO. He will also not be allowed to attend any shareholders' meetings of Stark Enterprises in the future. Hearing this, Obadiah remained calm, but the small shareholders started to make a commotion. Why did you fire Obadiah? Without him, the company's performance would drop dramatically. What happened? Obadiah is a veteran of the company. Yes, the company can't do without him. Although Obadiah is a villain to Tony, he is a very good CEO to ordinary shareholders. After all, almost 50% of Stark Enterprises' revenue was handled by Obadiah, and the positions of managers and general managers of some key departments were also held by Obadiah's confidants. If Obadiah were fired rashly, not to mention how much Stark Enterprises' stock price would drop, half of its departments would probably be paralyzed. Facing the questions from the small shareholders, Pepper had no intention of explaining but just said coldly, "Raise your hands and vote now." If she hadn't been careless last night and handed over the USB drive that copied Obadiah's crimes to the military, she wouldn't have been so passive. Now that the military was clearly favoring Obadiah and hadn't even made an arrest, she knew things were bad and decided to just vote. Chapter 18 Interlocking. After Pepper said to raise hands to vote, Tony immediately raised his hand. But none of the people below took action, they just looked at Tony and Pepper coldly. Pepper was not disappointed with this but continued, "Now the votes in favor account for 39% of the shares. According to the Articles of Association of the shareholders' meeting, those who oppose can now raise their hands. Those who abstain from voting will not be counted in the equity." Just as she was about to persuade everyone to abstain from voting, she saw all the small shareholders raising their hands, followed by Obadiah and Luna. This immediately made Pepper and Tony's faces look ugly. Although these small shareholders don't hold much shares, only 1% or 2%, they are numerous. Adding Obadiah and Luna's shares, it has reached 41%, 2 points more than them. From this we can also see how popular Obadiah is. You have to know that when he didn't have the 5% stake in Umbrella, he was able to unite everyone to remove Tony from the position of chairman, let alone now. At this point Pepper stopped talking. After all, she was still young and had only been in Stark Enterprises for 3 years. This was also her first time seeing Obadiah's prestige and she was a little caught off guard. After a while, seeing the silence at the scene, Obadiah said confidently, 41 to 39%, it seems that this shareholders' meeting will disappoint you. Okay, now for the second vote, Tony will leave the shareholders' meeting and no longer be involved in Stark Enterprises affairs. Hearing this, Tony immediately stood up and shook his head. No, you can't do this, this is Stark Enterprises, I am Stark. What made him despair was that most of the small shareholders raised their hands. However, some of the company's veterans still missed Tony's father very much, so they did not raise their hands. At one point, the vote on site reached 38%, but it was not enough to pass the resolution. Obadiah then looked at several company elders and said viciously, "Do you still want this kid to continue to destroy Stark Enterprises? If Howard saw Stark Industries today, do you think he would be happy or sad? The only way to save Stark Enterprises now is for me to take charge of Stark Enterprises, reopen the Weapons Research and Development Department, and accept orders from the military." Seeing that the elders seemed to be interested, he continued, "I promise that in 1 year the market value of Stark Enterprises will return to 300 billion, or even higher." Upon hearing this promise, the eyes of several elders immediately lit up and they all wanted to raise their hands. Although they watched Tony grow up and have a lot of affection for him, affection cannot be eaten. You have to know that the 1% of the shares in their hands were worth 3 billion in the past, but now it is only 1 billion. What kind of relationship can be worth 2 billion? Tony became anxious when he saw these veterans also raising their hands. Uncle Nunez, Uncle Hidalgo, you can't do this. Stark Enterprises can't do without me, only I can lead the company to become stronger. The two people named were Howard's good friends and were very old. At this moment they looked at Tony with their hands raised firmly. Tony, I know you're a good kid, but we have to eat too. Yeah, Tony, the stock price has dropped so much recently that my family can barely make ends meet. Without waiting for Tony to continue persuading him, Obadiah said excitedly, 40% to 39%. Tony, you're out, come on. Although one veteran shareholder did not raise his hand in the end, it did not affect the overall situation. And Tony also turned his attention to the last person. If he could get that 1% of the other party's shares, it would be 40 to 40, and he still had a chance. But before he could speak, the man turned his head. The meaning is very clear. For Howard's sake, he will not participate in the raising of hands, but asking him to support Tony is impossible. Just when Tony was feeling discouraged, Pepper suddenly stood up. No, there is another shareholder who did not participate in this shareholders' meeting. Who? SHILD. When Tony heard the word SHIELD, he immediately remembered that SHIELD also had a 5% stake. If he could get the help of SHIELD, he still had a chance. Pepper said, I am now applying to suspend the shareholders' meeting and continue in half an hour. Now it was Obadiah's turn to look unhappy. If SHIELD takes action, it can indeed play a crucial role. Wouldn't everything they had done be in vain by then? You know, in order to get the support of these small shareholders, he made a lot of promises last night and gave up a lot of interests. Thinking of this, he looked at Luna, hoping that she could come up with some solution. But Luna still had a confident smile on her face and just nodded at him. There is no problem with Miss Pepper's application, but if the voting result remains unchanged in half an hour, I will be sorry. Pepper glanced at Luna and said nothing, but stood up and left with Tony. After walking out of the conference room, Pepper immediately took out her cell phone to contact Carlson. Hello, the user you dialed has been turned off. On the other end of the phone, there was a sound of the phone being turned off. Shut down. Pepper felt uneasy and called again. But no matter how many times she called, the number Carlson left for her was always turned off. Tony watched Pepper continue to make calls and asked in confusion, what's wrong? The phone is turned off. Why is the phone turned off at this time? Try again. At this time, Luna walked out of the meeting room, looked at the two people in front of her, and suddenly smiled. I heard that someone reported to the Security Council last night that SHIELD was interfering in the affairs of ordinary people. If I'm not mistaken, they should still be being interrogated now. The current SHIELD is not yet the fully fledged SHIELD of the future, or even the SHIELD that has evolved into SHIELD. Therefore, SHIELD is still subject to monitoring and supervision by the Security Council. The rules set when SHIELD was established were to protect ordinary people from being threatened by extraordinary beings and from being attacked by ultra-advanced technology. At the same time, SHIELD is strictly prohibited from interfering in the affairs of ordinary people. Last night's real name report immediately resulted in SHIELD being supervised and questioned by the Security Council. Tony and Pepper paled when they heard this. But Pepper continued to make calls without giving up. Half an hour later, Carlson's phone was still unreachable, so the board meeting continued. Another vote, same as before. This also made Tony and Pepper lower their heads like defeated roosters, completely losing the confident attitude they had at noon. Seeing this, Obadiah immediately asked the security guard to drag Tony out of the company. Without Tony as his backer, Pepper was fired from his job. From then on, Stark Enterprises entered the era of Obadiah's control. Chapter 19, Never Change Your Original Intention. Night. In Tony's villa. Tony sat on the sofa with a thoughtful look on his face, his head down, not knowing what he was thinking. Pepper also sat beside Tony in a daze, her mind full of the scene of herself being kicked out. She never thought that one day she would be kicked out of the company in such a miserable way. In the morning, I thought Obadiah would definitely go in, but unexpectedly the appearance of Umbrella shattered all fantasies. At this point they can say that they have completely lost. According to regulations, unless there is an emergency, the board of directors can generally only meet once a month. In other words, even if they got the support of SHIELD, it would take a month before they could hold a board meeting. She didn't believe that according to Obadiah's methods, he would give them a month without taking any action. Sure enough, she soon received news from one of her subordinates who was still in the company. Obadiah applied to the CSRC for a financing quota of 1 billion shares. Upon hearing the news, Pepper felt her heart twitch and feel uncomfortable. Currently, Stark Enterprises has only 1 billion shares in total, and the share price is 100 per share. If the SEC approves the proposal, the number of Stark Enterprises shares will double and the equity will also be diluted. Tony's 39% stake became 19.5%. By then, even if SHIELD supports them, the equity will not be enough. When she thought of this, she immediately told Tony everything with great concern. But Tony's reaction was very calm, he just nodded lightly. This made Pepper confused. "Tony, what's wrong with you?" "Nothing. Don't you know what equity dilution means? We may never be able to go back." "Maybe it's better not to go back." At this point, Tony sighed slightly. The vote by shareholders and senior executives this afternoon completely broke his heart and also made him understand some things. He once thought he was indispensable to Stark Enterprises. But what happened at noon told him that the company no longer needed him. Maybe letting go is the best option. After all, I am just a scientific researcher and probably not suitable for management. When Pepper heard Tony's discouraging words, her eyes widened and she looked at him in disbelief. But thinking about his past, she felt that this was Tony's character. After all, the other party had always been a hands-off boss. Every day he was either dating a Victoria's Secret girl or taking a bath with some small star, and he rarely even went back to the company. But now is the most difficult time, the other party must not be discouraged. Thinking of this, she said, "Tony, Stark Enterprises is what your father left to you, and Mr. Howard certainly doesn't want to see Stark Enterprises become an accomplice in the massacre of civilians. So you must cheer up and never give up." Faced with Pepper's PUA, Tony looked at her strangely. "Pepper, I'm very sorry I'm not suited to management. I'll leave everything to you from now on, I have other things to do." When he heard about the massacre of civilians, he suddenly remembered that he had other things to do. So after saying this, he got up and went to the laboratory. "Jarvis, are there any new discoveries about the gene we found last time?" "That insect man did not have the X gene, so he is not a mutant and is most likely some kind of enhanced human. Since the United States proposed the Super Soldier Plan in '41, and Dr. Abraham Erskine created Captain America, the world has started super soldier plans one after another, such as the Round Table Knights meeting of the Sunset Empire, Captain Sunset, and the Red House plan of the North Bear Country to cultivate the Black Widow. He even heard that the Osborne Group had new enhancement technology. So he had a vague premonition that the insect man was an enhanced person of some evil force. He hated the fact that the Ten Rings gang used this enhanced technology to enslave civilians in the Middle East and killed countless people. He even felt that he had the responsibility and obligation to eliminate this evil force. "Mr. Stark, I'm very sorry, I don't have any new findings." "Well, it seems I need to find some professional people." On the other side, Pepper saw Tony rushing into the laboratory and could only shake her head helplessly, then went about her own business. At the same time, a banquet was being held in Obadiah's villa. Most of the shareholders and senior executives of Stark Enterprises were seen holding wine glasses and laughing happily. Waiters carrying wine glasses and food kept walking through the crowd. A moment later, Obadiah, wearing a neat suit, walked to the scene holding his wife's hand. When the people around him saw him, they immediately raised their glasses. "Let us congratulate Obadiah. To Obadiah cheers. To create greater glory for Stark Enterprises." Seeing this, Obadiah also responded by raising his glass one by one, showing great enthusiasm. After all, it is thanks to these shareholders that he was able to come back to life today, so he will naturally not ignore them. After a while, he saw Luna sitting alone in a corner not far away, so he took his wife's hand and walked over. "Ms. Luna, this is my wife, Alina." When Luna heard the voice, she turned to look at the other party and his wife, then raised the glass in her hand. "Hello, Mrs. Stanny." American women take their husband's surname after they get married. So no matter what Alina's last name was before, it is now the same as Obadiah's, Stanny. Alina was a woman in her 40s with long yellow hair and snow-white skin, wearing a tight purple high-slit evening gown. At the same time, some fisheye lines can be seen on the face, and the wrinkles are more obvious when smiling. "Hello, Miss Luna." After the three of them greeted each other, Luna said to Obadiah, "Congratulations, from now on you will have the final say in Stark Enterprises." "Haha." Obadiah laughed heartily for a moment, then raised his glass. "Thank you for your advice and help, otherwise I would not have been able to get through this crisis. This is a toast to you." After saying this, he drank the wine in his hand in one gulp. This immediately made Alina next to her frown slightly, feeling distressed. "Be careful, the doctor said you can't drink too much." Obadiah looked nonchalant and said confidently, "It's okay, dear, I am better now than ever before." After saying this, he patted his chest to show that he was physically strong. Since being injected with the T2 virus enhancement, his body functions have returned to their peak. At this moment, he felt that he could even arm wrestle with a tiger. Chapter 20 Reactor Explosion. After the three of them chatted for a while, Obadiah suddenly sent Alina away. "Ms. Luna, I think we should seize the opportunity and start the next cooperation immediately." He was able to win the board's victory by promising to bring the stock price back to its peak in a year, so he was a little impatient to start the cooperation. Hearing this, Luna put down the wine glass in her hand, looked at the people not far away, and then walked towards the garden. When Obadiah saw this, he immediately realized that there were too many people here and it was not suitable for conversation. So he immediately followed Luna and walked towards the garden. After a while, they came to the depths of the garden. "Cooperation will definitely take place, but there is no rush." "Why? Are you sure that the shareholders will continue to listen to you after the stock price goes back up?" Hearing this, Obadiah fell silent. Because he knew that Stark Industries' surname was Stark after all, not Stink. And today's victory was also very dangerous, 40-39. Those company veterans miss Howard very much and may betray him at any time. He didn't have any better solution for this and could only hope that his results would convince everyone. But if Tony suddenly came to his senses one day and promised not to close the weapons research and development and production department and continue to do business with the military, he felt that he had no chance of winning. Seeing that Obadiah kept his head down and didn't speak, Luna continued, "What we need to do now is not to raise the stock price immediately, but to suppress it and then apply for newly issued stocks and also buy as much equity as possible from other people." Obadiah was slightly stunned. "Suppress the stock price, but I promised them that I would raise the stock price." Although he is a villain who is dedicated to the company, not a profiteer. "Promise." There was a hint of disdain in Luna's eyes. "You promised to wait a year, but isn't it too early now?" After thinking about it, Obadiah gritted his teeth. "I understand, Miss Luna, what should we do now?" "Don't worry, Mr. Obadiah, I will tell you slowly later, but I want to collect the interest first. Let's have someone prepare the data for the arc reactor tomorrow." "Can I?" The next morning, in Tony's villa, Pepper stood in the living room, looking at the information in front of her. The more she looked, the more her brows furrowed, and the more pressure she felt. A moment later, Tony came downstairs in his pajamas. "Good morning, Pepper." After saying hello, he went to the refrigerator, took out a box of ice milk and drank it directly, then picked up a few biscuits and ate them. After filling my stomach and just putting down the milk carton, I saw Pepper appear in front of me. "Huh, why did you suddenly appear? You scared me." Pepper's face was solemn at this time. "Tony, this is far more serious than we thought." Tony came and sat on the sofa with a nonchalant look on his face. "Tell me the story." Last night and this morning I took a close look at Umbrella through Jarvis. Do you know what I found? Without waiting for Tony to ask, Pepper came to Tony and continued, Umbrella's main industries are two types, cosmetics and medical. Among them, skin care water and whitening cream are the most famous cosmetics, accounting for 30% of the global market share. Among them, facial masks, essences and lipsticks are famous. The situation in the medical field is even more exaggerated. You know the first aid spray, which is a very famous product in recent years. Any wound can stop bleeding with just a spray. This is a product of Umbrella. In addition, Umbrella also holds patents for more than 150 types of drugs, including anti-cancer drugs, anti-leukemia drugs, etc. There is also a common cold medicine on the market, which is also a product of Umbrella. These drugs account for 11% of the global market share. No wonder the Osborne Group kept saying in the past few days that it must not be surpassed by Umbrella. In my opinion, except for the US market, Osborne has long been surpassed by Umbrella. The reason why Pepper regards the 11% market share of pharmaceuticals as more important than the 30% share of cosmetics is because of the difference in market share. You should know that the current global market size of cosmetics is only about 800 billion, while the market size of pharmaceuticals has reached about 7,400 billion. The nearly tenfold gap represents 11% of the pharmaceutical market share, which is almost 90% of the cosmetics market share. But after hearing what Pepper said, Tony still looked indifferent. Hey Pepper, don't be so nervous. We don't have any major conflicts with Umbrella. They are just cooperating with Obadiah. But who knows how long this kind of cooperation can last. Besides, Stark Enterprises won't get many arms orders without the new weapons I researched, so they will still have to come to me when the time comes. After saying this, he showed a confident look again. Although he was hit hard by those shareholders and senior executives yesterday, as a man like Iron Man, he will not be easily defeated. Because he understood that the reason why Stark Enterprises was able to surpass other arms dealers and become the #1 supplier to the US military in addition to its good quality was because of his genius mind. There is no other company that can supply all kinds of powerful modern weapons. Now that Stark Enterprises has not upgraded itself, it can only sell the old weapons and equipment. Naturally, it will not be able to sustain it for too long and will be overtaken by other arms dealers. After listening to Tony's explanation, Pepper thought about it and felt the same way, so she breathed a sigh of relief. Just when the two were quiet, Jarvis' voice suddenly rang out. Mr. Stark, I think there is some news that you should read. Oh, what news? I'll broadcast it to you. The next second, a projection appeared in front of Tony and Pepper. The person in the picture is Obadiah. At this time, the other party was wearing a very formal suit and tie. Especially the bald head, which was shiny and oily. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. As the CEO of Stark Enterprises, I am deeply sorry to inform you of this news. The explosion that occurred at the arc reactor last night was caused by an employee's operational error, who rashly started the immature reactor without ensuring safety facilities. Although no one has died so far, 7 people have been hospitalized with serious injuries. When the reporters in front of Obadiah heard this, they immediately pressed the shutter button frantically to take pictures. After a while, it was time for reporters to ask questions. The reporters are most concerned about 2 things at this time. The first is when the arc reactor will mature. And the second is whether Tony Stark has really left Stark Enterprises. Regarding these 2 issues, Obadiah expressed concerns about the technology of the arc reactor and would consider whether to terminate this technology. As for Tony's departure, he expressed his approval. Following the release of this news, as soon as the stock market opened in the morning, Stark Enterprises' stock price was once again plunged. The last time this happened, it was Tony who said he would no longer sell arms. Chapter 21 New Research. After reading the news and learning about the situation of Stark's stock market, Tony and Pepper immediately smiled confidently. Tony, you're right, Stark Enterprises really can't leave you. The corners of Tony's mouth rose slightly, with a look of great pride on his face. Well, Stark Enterprises is now in your hands. If the shareholders come to see you, just say I'm busy and can't see them. After saying that, he stood up and walked towards the luxury car outside. Yesterday, Jarvis had made appointments for him with some biological experts. He was going to meet these experts and study the flesh and blood of the monster. He couldn't let go of that monster. When Pepper saw Tony leaving, she started thinking about how she would control these people if the top executives of Stark Enterprises came. Jingle bell. At this moment suddenly a cell phone rang. Could it be that they couldn't help themselves so soon? Thinking of this, the corners of her mouth rose slightly, revealing a smile. But when she saw the caller ID, her brows frowned slightly. Because it was Coulson who called. Agent Coulson, thank God you're okay. Oh, Miss Pepper, you know everything. Well, someone told me yesterday that someone reported you guys by real name. There was silence on the phone for a while. I wonder what Miss Pepper wants to see me about. Is such that. After a while, Pepper briefly recounted what happened at yesterday's shareholders' meeting. After listening to this, Coulson did not answer immediately but said he would ask his superiors for instructions. Pepper naturally understood this. By the way, if someone talks to you about what happened the night before yesterday, you insist that you saw technology beyond your comprehension. Huh, what does that mean? Literally, I don't have time, you must remember this. Do. Looking at the hung-up call, Pepper was confused and didn't understand what the other party meant. In the corridor of the SHIELD building. After Coulson hung up the phone, a look of worry flashed across his eyes. SHIELD was in a turbulent time at this time, and Tony was unexpectedly kicked out of the board of directors again. If Director Nick knew this news, he would probably have a headache again. Just then, a man in a suit and tie walked over, his eyes full of confusion. Agent Coulson, what are you doing here? Seeing the man appear, Coulson immediately hid his phone and gave a kind smile. Sir, I didn't do anything, I'm just too tired, I need to take a rest. The man in the suit nodded coldly. Now go back to the conference room, it will be your turn soon. Okay, I'll come now. After saying this, he took advantage of the other party's inattention and secretly threw the phone into the vase beside the corridor. In fact, the consequences of SHIELD being reported by real name this time were far more serious than Pepper thought. As the largest official agency responsible for managing supernatural affairs, SHIELD possesses enormous power, but it is also closely watched by the Security Council. Moreover, the relationship among the Security Council members at that time was not as tense or even hostile as it was in later generations, so their views on SHIELD were still very consistent. If you dare to meddle in the affairs of ordinary people today, will you meddle in the affairs of the Security Council tomorrow? This precedent must never be set. So this time, the investigation team consisting of 5 Security Council members was launched in a grand manner. SHIELD from top to bottom is also undergoing the most severe questioning. The time came 3 days later. In the underground laboratory of the Umbrella Building. Li Feng's eyes showed a rare hint of interest as he looked at the G3 virus experiment subject in front of him. It was seen that the new experimental subject had reached the 3rd stage of the G virus. It had grown to more than 2 meters tall. The eyeball on its right arm had become slightly smaller, but an eye had also grown on its leg. The tumor that was previously protruding from the right chest has now turned into a bone spur. The subject's original head has almost completely sunken into the body and become twisted. The left arm has also turned into a huge claw, but it has no eyeballs, so it is slightly smaller than the right arm. A pair of brand new claws have grown under the original hands and can move freely. The experimental subject at this time no longer had any human features in appearance. His original hands had moved backwards like the wings of a fallen angel, and he looked extremely hideous and terrifying. The G3 virus allows the experimental subject to choose conditional evolution under certain circumstances, rather than completely disordered evolution. For example, if too much sedative is given, antibodies to the sedative will be formed and the strength will be increased because of the need to struggle against the chains. I guess if it needs to fly, those huge hands can turn into real wings. I just don't know how long it will take to evolve to the fourth stage, and as for the fifth stage, it must be suppressed. Judging from the existing data, the more stages of evolution the G virus has, the better. Although the fourth stage is still acceptable and the strength will be greatly improved, the fifth stage is almost useless. It will turn into a reptilian monster with a huge body that is almost impossible to move. Although its defense is greatly improved, its attack is almost gone. Judging from modern firepower, a few mortar rounds are enough to kill the enemy. This can be described as complete degradation. However, Li Feng believes that he can improve the evolutionary direction of the G virus and will not let the G virus become more and more useless as it evolves. Just then the sound of high heels was heard. Da-da-da. Soon, at the other end of the corridor, a beautiful woman with long black hair wearing a white chemical protective suit and holding documents in her hands appeared. Although the other person's figure is not as hot as Luna's and her height is only about 1.6 meters, the curves of her face are softer, and with the glasses on her nose she looks intellectual. Boss, the research on the T4 virus has made some progress. Oh. Hearing this, Li Feng finally turned around and looked at the other party. Report the situation. The other person's name is Philia, an orphan who was adopted at the same time as Luna. However, unlike Luna who majored in administration, Philia chose biological research and was assigned to the experiment to study the T4 virus. Although Red Queen is good, it is an artificial intelligence after all and is not as good as humans in terms of innovation and research and development. Philia picked up the document in her hand and opened her small red lips. Boss, I improved the T4 virus. In addition to having greater strength and speed than T3, we also added a group of X genes. This X gene can give the user skin as hard as rock. However, the recovery ability has been weakened, only about 1/3 of the original. In addition, we have greatly suppressed the evolution of the liquor, which means that it must consume more than 50 times more energy than T1 in order to evolve into a liquor. Chapter 22, Heading to the Middle East Again. The T-virus was created by Li Feng after he came to the Marvel world. He cultivated the progenitor virus through Red Queen, then combined the progenitor virus with leech gene fragments to finally isolate a completely new virus. This is a general term for a ribonucleic acid RNA virus which has countless different strains. There are more or less differences in the transmissibility, symptoms, and enhancement directions between different strains. As a ribonucleic acid RNA virus, the T-virus has the ability to strengthen and recombine biological genetic factors. So Li Feng asked Philia to try to use the X gene unique to the Marvel world and integrate it into the T-virus. I didn't expect that the other party actually succeeded. Li Feng specifically requested to suppress the evolutionary form of the liquor. After all, my clients are all humans, and humans are creatures that are strongly influenced by visual senses. If customers knew that the product they bought would eventually turn into a monster, their interest in the product would probably decrease significantly. Besides, although the liquor greatly increases strength and agility, it greatly affects intelligence. Isn't this a degeneration? As Philia reported, Li Feng nodded with satisfaction. Have human experiments been conducted? Not yet, we are currently conducting experiments on animals. Then let's start human experiments. I came to you for this matter. Red Queen said that the experimental subject is gone. Red Queen, what's going on? The next second, the projection of Red Queen appeared in front of the two of them. Master, due to recent news media reports, we have suspended the acquisition of experimental subjects in the United States. But it takes a lot of money to buy it from the dark forces. Most of the liquid funds were used by Miss Luna to purchase shares of Stark Enterprises. A small portion is purchasing shares of Starship Corporation. Hearing this, Li Feng immediately remembered that some time ago he had asked Luna to attend Disney's charity gala because of this matter. Moreover, now is the most critical time to acquire Stark Enterprises, and we must not break the chain now. After thinking for a while, he said, "Send a message to Luna, agreeing to contact the Northern Bear Country, but it must not be discovered by the military." The Northern Bear Country has always been very interested in the T virus, but because of the United States' attitude towards the Northern Bear Country, Li Feng has never had any contact with it. After all, you still have to abide by other people's rules in the United States. Everyone on the entire blue planet knows that the United States is extremely hostile to the Northern Bear Country, and can even be said to be its mortal enemy. If the Northern Bear Kingdom had not suddenly attacked them later, who knows who would be the overlord of Blue Star in the future. But if we want to get new funds now, we can only contact the Northern Bear Country. There are also some things and people in the Northern Bear Country that interest him very much. Yes, Master. By the way, tomorrow is Congressman Robert Kelly's birthday. I just sent him an invitation. I wonder how the host will arrange it. When Li Feng heard the name Robert, he immediately thought of this person. It can be said that the reason why Umbrella has been able to develop to its current scale has a lot to do with the other party. When talking about Robert, we have to talk about mutants. There are 3 mutant factions: the Brotherhood, the X-Men, and the Hellfire Club. The Brotherhood is a villain who believes that mutants are superior to humans and should enslave ordinary people and become the masters of Blue Planet, causing a lot of destruction. The X-Men are decent people who believe that humans and mutants should live in peace. They also opened the Weasel School for gifted youngsters to teach new mutants how to control their superpowers. Although the Hellfire Club is also a mutant force, it is more of a social club for the social elite, mainly providing recreation and entertainment. In one of the Brotherhood's plans, the Master of Illusion used illusions to make Robert believe that he witnessed the X-Men's Cyclops randomly shooting at the crowd. The original intention of this plan was to make Robert hate the X-Men, but it evolved into a great hostility towards all mutants. So Congressman Robert worked hard to promote the Mutant Control Act and was also the main sponsor of the Sobriety Project. The Awakening Project is designed to create newer Sentinel robots to kill all mutants. Umbrella has always been favored by Senator Robert because of the emergence of T-virus enhancement technology. He thinks it can be used as a means to deal with mutants, so he has always supported Li Feng politically. Of course, Li Feng also had some cooperation with the other party. After thinking for a while, he said, "I will attend the birthday party in person. Philia, please go with me." Yes, Master. As the words fell, the Red Queen's projection disappeared. But Philia blushed slightly. Compared to the open and bold Luna, she, who has always been in the laboratory, has a more shy and timid personality like Asians. So she felt very shy about this invitation. But she didn't refuse. After all, such opportunities were rare and she usually took Luna out. The night in Tony's villa. At this time, Tony, with the cooperation of the mechanical arm, was wearing the newly developed Mark IV armor. Compared with Mark III, Mark IV has thicker armor and more external firearms. This is because Tony was frightened by the mantis-like monster. He was afraid that if he encountered more than 2 monsters, he would be killed instantly. Zizzy. With the rotation of mechanical gears, the helmet was put on his head, the mask was lowered, and various data appeared in front of his eyes. After a while, Jarvis' voice appeared in his ears. Mark IV has started self-checking. The weapon system is normal, the power system is normal, the energy system is normal, and the armor system is normal. Hearing this, Tony nodded. Good man, let's get going then. As soon as he finished speaking, flames spurted out from under his feet, and then he flew out of the villa and disappeared into the sky. The sonic boom of woo-woo pierced the sky. While flying, he recalled the biological experts he had invited in the past few days. According to those experts, the genes he brought back could not possibly appear in nature. The only possibility was that they were artificially created. So he had to go to the Middle East to check again and find the source of the monsters and then destroy them. He would never allow anyone to use this evil enhancement technology to massacre and enslave civilians. Meanwhile, in the villa, Pepper heard the sound of breaking air and immediately knew that Tony had left again. She no longer felt the same worry and nervousness as before. After all, Tony wore the armor and ran around a lot during these 3 days. So she didn't expect Tony to go to the Middle East this time. At this time, she was worried about another thing. That is, the imagined scene of Stark Enterprises executives and shareholders coming to take them back did not happen. Although there has been a lot of negative news about Stark Enterprises in recent days and the stock price has fallen to 51 shares, those people just don't come to them. Strange. Chapter 23 Justice Iron Man. In the Gumira region of the Middle East. Because of the time difference, it was still morning when Tony arrived here. After searching around, he soon found a village that was burning. Then he saw a group of turbaned men with rifles escorting a group of children into a car. Hurry up, get up there. Don't run, I'll kill you if you run. Get up there, we'll be leaving soon. A group of children, escorted by members of the Ten Rings gang, trembled as they boarded the cargo convertible. They were very obedient and kept very quiet. Because the children who were not quiet had been shot. At this time, a member of the Ten Rings gang next to the car saw that the children had already got on the car, so he took off his headscarf, revealing a Western face. I saw him light a cigarette and take a puff. After we finish this job, we can take a good rest. After closing the car door, the man next to him took the cigarette from the other person's mouth and took a deep puff. Yeah, after I finish this job, I'm going back too. Go back, what's wrong? I'm tired of killing people every day. Too. The man took the cigarette from his companion's mouth and took a puff. Just now, a little girl who was about my daughter's age asked me not to kill her mother, but I did it anyway. Although they joined the Ten Rings gang to do evil, they are also human beings with emotions and desires. Although I don't have much conscience, I still have some. Just as the two were talking, suddenly a ray of light fell from the sky and hit the truck that was starting. With a bang, the truck's engine was instantly destroyed. Then a gold and red robot fell to the ground. Seeing this, the people from the Ten Rings gang around them immediately pulled the trigger without hesitation. Duh-duh-duh. The bullets hit the robot like a tickle, just scraping off the paint on the surface. Tony, who was inside the Mark IV, found that there was not even a vibration and he immediately felt safe. The previous Mark III's armor was still too thin. Sometimes he was really afraid of encountering armor-piercing bullets and being penetrated in an instant. Even if the Mark IV encounters armor-piercing bullets, it is estimated that it can withstand 2 hits. After feeling the armor of Mark IV, Tony raised his hand and the palm cannon was fired instantly. Bang bang. 2 members of the Ten Rings gang were knocked away instantly, and their lives and deaths were unknown. Tony then continued to perform, using his palm cannon to knock away the surrounding enemies one by one. When the children in the truck saw this, they immediately showed shocked expressions. Wow, Superman is here to save us. This isn't Superman, it's a robot. That's a super robot. Unlike the children, the 2 Ten Rings gang members who were smoking earlier immediately dropped their weapons and pretended to be dead when they saw such a powerful enemy appear. For them, it is just a matter of working for money, not risking their lives. Bang bang bang. After a while, all the Ten Rings gang members who were still standing had fallen down. Tony looked around and found that there was no enemy standing, and he was immediately disappointed. It seems that not all members of the Ten Rings gang will turn into mantis-like monsters. So he flew up and looked for new enemies. When the children in the truck saw that all the bad guys were dead, they immediately jumped out of the truck. Super robots defeat the bad guys. Awesome! Mom and Dad. At this time, the surviving relatives of the children from afar all ran over. Woo-woo, kid, I'm so glad you're okay. I thought I'd never see you again. Mom, it's okay, where's Dad? Woo-woo. Tony, who was in midair, was also very moved when he saw this scene. At this moment, he felt the meaning of his existence. To make the world a better place for world peace without pain and sorrow. He felt he had evolved. Before, although he had the idea of cracking down on criminals, he was more focused on taking revenge on the Ten Rings gang. But at this moment, he felt that he was no longer doing it for revenge, but really for world peace. Only after making sure that the civilians were safe did he leave with peace of mind. After a while, he seemed to have found the enemy's lair and saw the missile vehicles produced by Stark Enterprises. This immediately made him furious. But in the next second, suddenly there was a loud bang. Tony felt as if he had hit a truck and was knocked flying and fell to the ground. Fortunately, Mark IV has an extraordinary ability to absorb shock waves, otherwise even if the Mark IV was unharmed, he inside would be shocked to death. After getting up from the ground, he saw a tank not far away aiming at him. So he immediately raised his right hand, and a mysterious armor-piercing bullet popped out from his arm. The next second, while the tank was still reloading its shells, he fired the armor-piercing shell and turned around without hesitation. Swoosh-a-boom. The armor-piercing bullet seemed to have hit the tank's ammunition compartment, causing a secondary explosion. Then he flew towards the missile vehicle. Just as he was about to launch an attack, a group of people from the 10 Rings gang ran out and attacked him. Da-da-da. Boom. Unlucky Tony was hit by a portable missile hidden in the dark by the enemy and was knocked away again. After standing up again, he immediately stretched out his hands and continuously fired palm cannon attacks. However, because he was worried that the enemy had portable missiles, he kept moving around while attacking. For a moment, the people of the 10 Rings gang were killed without any chance to fight back. Rumbled. A few minutes later, with the final explosion, the missile vehicle produced by Stark Enterprises was also destroyed. This immediately made Tony feel relieved. Just as he was about to take off again, he suddenly found that the 3 people who were lying on the ground climbed up. Roared. A strange roar was heard. It was seen that these 3 people had different mutations all over their bodies. Among them, the man with darker skin had black scales on his chest, a bit like the shell of a beetle. There was also a man who was the oldest and had white hair. He had 6 tiny claws growing on his lower abdomen. The last man was the youngest and looked white. However, he had undergone the biggest change. From the neck upwards, his entire head had turned into an insect's head with densely packed teeth and compound eyes. It appeared again. It turned out to be some kind of enhanced technology. However, it now seems that the direction of this reinforcement is unknown. Could be any kind of insect. Roar! Before Tony could think about it, the shell man rushed over. He immediately raised his hand and attacked with palm cannon. Boom! A beam of light hit the shell man, but he managed to withstand the impact without even a scratch on his skin. Oh, this is unexpected. As soon as he finished speaking, he was knocked away by the shell man. It seems like I need to add more armor next time, otherwise I'll get a concussion from flying around all day. Chapter 24: Discovery of the Mass Burial Pit. From the fact that Tony was still complaining, we could tell that although he was knocked flying, he was not seriously injured. After all, the Mark IV has double armor, and even the paint is not scratched at this time. However, just as he steadied himself and prepared to fight back, the man with the bug head rushed over like a rhinoceros. Another bang. Tony was knocked away again. This time he flew towards the man with insect claws on his abdomen. The man with insect claws grabbed Tony, and then the insect claws on his abdomen kept tightening. Crack and crack. The sound of armor unable to bear the weight was heard, which immediately made Tony's face change slightly. Jarvis, report the situation. Mr. Stark, you are suffering from a huge crushing force, and the armor has been bent by 1 centimeter. Activate all weapons that can fight back. The next second, a magazine popped out from Mark IV's shoulder, revealing the mini rocket inside. Rumbled. As these mini rockets were launched, the insect claw man in front of Tony was instantly knocked away. Hiss. After a roar, the insect claw man quickly climbed up. Seeing that the other person only had small wounds caused by the explosion and was recovering quickly, Tony thought to himself that it was not good. It seems that even without the mutated parts, these monsters have become extremely powerful. You should know that although these mini rockets cannot destroy heavy tanks, they are more than enough to deal with light tanks. This shows that the skin of these insect people is as hard as a medium tank. After a while, Tony saw the other two insect men rushing over again, so he quickly flew up and reached a height of more than 50 meters. He planned to use the same old trick again and take advantage of the fact that these insect people could not fly. If the insect man wants to evolve wings, then he can just fire armor-piercing bullets. But this time, the insect man's reaction disappointed him. After roaring for a while, the three insect men realized that the enemy would not come down, so they fled away. Seeing this, Tony immediately followed. He suspected that these insect people were going back, so he planned to follow them to see if he could find the enemy's lair and find out which force was studying these insect people. After chasing for more than 10 minutes, he had to launch an attack on the insect man. Because there is a small town not far ahead and there are many civilians on the road, some of whom are children. These insect people seem to have lost their minds and kill anyone they see. Even if this town is really related to the insect people, they will only investigate after killing them. SHHH. As the two missiles were launched, the three insect men were immediately blown away by the strong air wave. The attacked insect man did not run towards the town, but kept roaring at Tony in midair. Obviously, these insect people do have some problems with their intelligence. But how to solve them? Currently, the only weapon that can kill Zergmen is armor-piercing bullets, but there is no way to track armor-piercing bullets. It seems that the only way is to limit the movement space of these insect people. After looking for a while, Tony's eyes lit up. Not far away he saw a huge pit. So he lowered his figure a little and flew towards the huge pit while attacking the insect people with his palm cannon. But after flying near the pit, Tony almost vomited and his face became extremely ugly. Although the huge pit was covered with mud, a large number of corpses and body parts could still be seen. The number was so large, at least several thousand bodies, that it could simply be called a massacre. Obviously, someone massacred civilians and then dug a pit to bury them. But because it was not buried deep enough, it was dug out by animals. Oh my God, are these all civilians massacred by the 10 Rings gang? They are simply demons. After asking Jarvis to take photos and record videos, he immediately remembered his purpose. Looking back, he found that 3 insect people had actually jumped into the mass burial pit, picked up the corpses' limbs and started eating them. Sure enough, a beast is a beast. The next second, 3 armor-piercing bullets were fired and instantly hit the 3 insect men who were eating. Boom! After a burst of explosions, the 3 insect men that had given him a headache were turned into pieces. After picking up some scraps of meat to study, he flew up again and went back. He must make what happened here public so that the whole world will know about the atrocities that took place here. After an hour, in a secret base of the 10 Rings gang, a man wearing a face scarf with only his eyes exposed walked into the office. Sitting in the office was a Middle Eastern man in his 60s with a long beard. He is the current leader of the 10 Rings gang, the Son of God. Ever since the Mandarin abandoned the 10 Rings gang and disappeared more than 20 years ago, the 10 Rings gang's influence in the Middle East has been taken over by the Son of God. After hearing the sound of the door opening, the Son of God raised his head and looked at the person who came. Muhaddad, what's the hurry? Muhaddad was still panting at this time and said hurriedly, Sir, our troops in Gumira have suffered heavy losses and 3 people who were granted the divine gift have also died. Upon hearing about such a huge loss, the Son of God frowned. Who did it? We don't know yet. Muhaddad shook his head and asked hesitantly, is it possible that the U.S. military did it? In 8, the U.S. military could be called the world police and meddle in other people's affairs because there was no force that could confront it. Muhaddad was well aware of what they had done, so he was afraid that the U.S. military had intervened. But when the Son of God heard this, he immediately shook his head. It can't be the U.S. military. Seeing Muhaddad's puzzled expression, he did not continue to explain but just said, maybe it's the Iron Man or the guy called Iron Man from last time. Send people to the surrounding villages to ask if any robots have appeared. Yes. Muhaddad nodded and turned to leave. Watching his men leave, the Son of God rubbed his temples with a headache, then took out a mobile phone hidden in a secret compartment and made a mysterious call. An hour ago, our base in Gumira was attacked. Who is it? I don't know who the enemy is yet, but he must be very powerful. I have already lost 4 enhanced people. You know we can't possibly help you. I need 300 million me knives to buy 30 of the same strengthening potions I bought last time. Impossible. How much can you give? There was silence on the phone for a while. How's your plan going? When the plan was at a critical moment, they promised us that as long as we took over the Gumira area, they would cooperate with us to attack from the south. 100 million me Dao, when you capture Gumira, I will call you. Dudo. Seeing the other party hang up the phone, Shengzi put down the phone expressionlessly, lowered his head, and no one knew what he was thinking. Chapter 22, Heading to the Middle East Again. The T-virus was created by Li Feng after he came to the Marvel world. He cultivated the progenitor virus through Red Queen, then combined the progenitor virus with leech gene fragments to finally isolate a completely new virus. This is a general term for a ribonucleic acid RNA virus which has countless different strains. There are more or less differences in the transmissibility, symptoms, and enhancement directions between different strains. As a ribonucleic acid RNA virus, the T-virus has the ability to strengthen and recombine biological genetic factors. So Li Feng asked Philia to try to use the X gene unique to the Marvel world and integrate it into the T-virus. I didn't expect that the other party actually succeeded. Li Feng specifically requested to suppress the evolutionary form of the liquor. After all, my clients are all humans, and humans are creatures that are strongly influenced by visual senses. If customers knew that the product they bought would eventually turn into a monster, their interest in the product would probably decrease significantly. Besides, although the liquor greatly increases strength and agility, it greatly affects intelligence. Isn't this a degeneration? As Philia reported, Li Feng nodded with satisfaction. Have human experiments been conducted? Not yet, we are currently conducting experiments on animals. Then let's start human experiments. I came to you for this matter. Red Queen said that the experimental subject is gone. Red Queen, what's going on? The next second, the projection of Red Queen appeared in front of the two of them. Master, due to recent news media reports, we have suspended the acquisition of experimental subjects in the United States. But it takes a lot of money to buy it from the dark forces. Most of the liquid funds were used by Miss Luna to purchase shares of Stark Enterprises. A small portion is purchasing shares of Starship Corporation. Hearing this, Li Feng immediately remembered that some time ago he had asked Luna to attend Disney's charity gala because of this matter. Moreover, now is the most critical time to acquire Stark Enterprises, and we must not break the chain now. After thinking for a while, he said, "Send a message to Luna, agreeing to contact the Northern Bear Country, but it must not be discovered by the military." The Northern Bear Country has always been very interested in the T-virus, but because of the United States' attitude towards the Northern Bear Country, Li Feng has never had any contact with it. After all, you still have to abide by other people's rules in the United States. Everyone on the entire blue planet knows that the United States is extremely hostile to the Northern Bear Country, and can even be said to be its mortal enemy. If the Northern Bear Kingdom had not suddenly attacked them later, who knows who would be the overlord of Blue Star in the future. But if we want to get new funds now, we can only contact the Northern Bear Country. There are also some things and people in the Northern Bear Country that interest him very much. Yes, Master. By the way, tomorrow is Congressman Robert Kelly's birthday. I just sent him an invitation. I wonder how the host will arrange it. When Li Feng heard the name Robert, he immediately thought of this person. It can be said that the reason why Umbrella has been able to develop to its current scale has a lot to do with the other party. When talking about Robert, we have to talk about mutants. There are 3 mutant factions: the Brotherhood, the X-Men, and the Hellfire Club. The Brotherhood is a villain who believes that mutants are superior to humans and should enslave ordinary people and become the masters of Blue Planet, causing a lot of destruction. The X-Men are decent people who believe that humans and mutants should live in peace. They also opened the Weasel School for gifted youngsters to teach new mutants how to control their superpowers. Although the Hellfire Club is also a mutant force, it is more of a social club for the social elite, mainly providing recreation and entertainment. In one of the Brotherhood's plans, the Master of Illusion used illusions to make Robert believe that he witnessed the X-Men's Cyclops randomly shooting at the crowd. The original intention of this plan was to make Robert hate the X-Men, but it evolved into a great hostility towards all mutants. So Congressman Robert worked hard to promote the Mutant Control Act and was also the main sponsor of the Sobriety Project. The Awakening Project is designed to create newer Sentinel robots to kill all mutants. Umbrella has always been favored by Senator Robert because of the emergence of T-virus enhancement technology. He thinks it can be used as a means to deal with mutants, so he has always supported Li Feng politically. Of course, Li Feng also had some cooperation with the other party. After thinking for a while, he said, "I will attend the birthday party in person. Philia, please go with me." "Yes, master." As the words fell, the Red Queen's projection disappeared. But Philia blushed slightly. Compared to the open and bold Luna, she, who has always been in the laboratory, has a more shy and timid personality like Asians. So she felt very shy about this invitation. But she didn't refuse. After all, such opportunities were rare and she usually took Luna out. The night in Tony's villa. At this time, Tony, with the cooperation of the mechanical arm, was wearing the newly developed Mark IV armor. Compared with Mark III, Mark IV has thicker armor and more external firearms. This is because Tony was frightened by the mantis-like monster. He was afraid that if he encountered more than 2 monsters, he would be killed instantly. Zizzy. With the rotation of mechanical gears, the helmet was put on his head, the mask was lowered, and various data appeared in front of his eyes. After a while, Jarvis' voice appeared in his ears. Mark IV has started self-checking. The weapon system is normal, the power system is normal, the energy system is normal, and the armor system is normal. Hearing this, Tony nodded. "Good man, let's get going then." As soon as he finished speaking, flames spurted out from under his feet, and then he flew out of the villa and disappeared into the sky. The sonic boom of woo-woo pierced the sky. While flying, he recalled the biological experts he had invited in the past few days. According to those experts, the genes he brought back could not possibly appear in nature. The only possibility was that they were artificially created. So he had to go to the Middle East to check again and find the source of the monsters and then destroy them. He would never allow anyone to use this evil enhancement technology to massacre and enslave civilians. Meanwhile, in the villa, Pepper heard the sound of breaking air and immediately knew that Tony had left again. She no longer felt the same worry and nervousness as before. After all, Tony wore the armor and ran around a lot during these 3 days. So she didn't expect Tony to go to the Middle East this time. At this time, she was worried about another thing. That is, the imagined scene of Stark Enterprises executives and shareholders coming to take them back did not happen. Although there has been a lot of negative news about Stark Enterprises in recent days and the stock price has fallen to 51 shares, those people just don't come to them. Strained. Chapter 23, Justice Iron Man. In the Gumira region of the Middle East. Because of the time difference, it was still morning when Tony arrived here. After searching around, he soon found a village that was burning. Then he saw a group of turbaned men with rifles escorting a group of children into a car. "Hurry up, get up there. Don't run, I'll kill you if you run. Get up there, we'll be leaving soon." A group of children, escorted by members of the 10 Rings gang, trembled as they boarded the cargo convertible. They were very obedient and kept very quiet. Because the children who were not quiet had been shot. At this time, a member of the 10 Rings gang next to the car saw that the children had already got on the car, so he took off his headscarf, revealing a Western face. I saw him light a cigarette and take a puff. After we finish this job, we can take a good rest. After closing the car door, the man next to him took the cigarette from the other person's mouth and took a deep puff. Yeah, after I finish this job, I'm going back too. Go back, what's wrong? I'm tired of killing people every day. Two. The man took the cigarette from his companion's mouth and took a puff. Just now, a little girl who was about my daughter's age asked me not to kill her mother, but I did it anyway. Although they joined the 10 Rings gang to do evil, they are also human beings with emotions and desires. Although I don't have much conscience, I still have some. Just as the two were talking, suddenly a ray of light fell from the sky and hit the truck that was starting. With a bang, the truck's engine was instantly destroyed. Then a gold and red robot fell to the ground. Seeing this, the people from the 10 Rings gang around them immediately pulled the trigger without hesitation. Duh-duh-duh. The bullets hit the robot like a tickle, just scraping off the paint on the surface. Tony, who was inside the Mark IV, found that there was not even a vibration and he immediately felt safe. The previous Mark III's armor was still too thin. Sometimes he was really afraid of encountering armor-piercing bullets and being penetrated in an instant. Even if the Mark IV encounters armor-piercing bullets, it is estimated that it can withstand 2 hits. After feeling the armor of Mark IV, Tony raised his hand and the palm cannon was fired instantly. Bang bang. 2 members of the 10 Rings gang were knocked away instantly, and their lives and deaths were unknown. Tony then continued to perform, using his palm cannon to knock away the surrounding enemies one by one. When the children in the truck saw this, they immediately showed shocked expressions. Wow, Superman is here to save us. This isn't Superman, it's a robot. That's a super robot. Unlike the children, the 10 Rings gang members who were smoking earlier immediately dropped their weapons and pretended to be dead when they saw such a powerful enemy appear. For them, it is just a matter of working for money, not risking their lives. Bang bang bang. After a while, all the 10 Rings gang members who were still standing had fallen down. Tony looked around and found that there was no enemy standing, and he was immediately disappointed. It seems that not all members of the 10 Rings gang will turn into mantis-like monsters. So he flew up and looked for new enemies. When the children in the truck saw that all the bad guys were dead, they immediately jumped out of the truck. Super robots defeat the bad guys. Awesome! Mom and Dad. At this time, the surviving relatives of the children from afar all ran over. Woo-woo, kid, I'm so glad you're okay. I thought I'd never see you again. Mom, it's okay, where's Dad? Woo-woo. Tony, who was in midair, was also very moved when he saw this scene. At this moment, he felt the meaning of his existence. To make the world a better place for world peace without pain and sorrow. He felt he had evolved. Before, although he had the idea of cracking down on criminals, he was more focused on taking revenge on the 10 Rings gang. But at this moment, he felt that he was no longer doing it for revenge, but really for world peace. Only after making sure that the civilians were safe did he leave with peace of mind. After a while, he seemed to have found the enemy's lair and saw the missile vehicles produced by Stark Enterprises. This immediately made him furious. But in the next second, suddenly there was a loud bang. Tony felt as if he had hit a truck and was knocked flying and fell to the ground. Fortunately, Mark IV has an extraordinary ability to absorb shock waves, otherwise even if the Mark IV was unharmed, he inside would be shocked to death. After getting up from the ground, he saw a tank not far away aiming at him. So he immediately raised his right hand, and a mysterious armor-piercing bullet popped out from his arm. The next second, while the tank was still reloading its shells, he fired the armor-piercing shell and turned around without hesitation. Swoosha-boom! The armor-piercing bullet seemed to have hit the tank's ammunition compartment, causing a secondary explosion. Then he flew towards the missile vehicle. Just as he was about to launch an attack, a group of people from the 10 Rings gang ran out and attacked him. Duh-duh-duh. Boom. Unlucky Tony was hit by a portable missile hidden in the dark by the enemy and was knocked away again. After standing up again, he immediately stretched out his hands and continuously fired palm cannon attacks. However, because he was worried that the enemy had portable missiles, he kept moving around while attacking. For a moment, the people of the Ten Rings gang were killed without any chance to fight back. Rumbled. A few minutes later, with the final explosion, the missile vehicle produced by Stark Enterprises was also destroyed. This immediately made Tony feel relieved. Just as he was about to take off again, he suddenly found that the three people who were lying on the ground climbed up. Roared. A strange roar was heard. It was seen that these three people had different mutations all over their bodies. Among them, the man with darker skin had black scales on his chest, a bit like the shell of a beetle. There was also a man who was the oldest and had white hair. He had 6 tiny claws growing on his lower abdomen. The last man was the youngest and looked white. However, he had undergone the biggest change. From the neck upwards, his entire head had turned into an insect's head with densely packed teeth and compound eyes. It appeared again. It turned out to be some kind of enhanced technology. However, it now seems that the direction of this reinforcement is unknown. Could be any kind of insect. Roared. Before Tony could think about it, the shell man rushed over. He immediately raised his hand and attacked with palm cannon. Boom! A beam of light hit the shell man, but he managed to withstand the impact without even a scratch on his skin. Oh, this is unexpected. As soon as he finished speaking, he was knocked away by the shell man. It seems like I need to add more armor next time, otherwise I'll get a concussion from flying around all day. Chapter 24: Discovery of the Mass Burial Pit. From the fact that Tony was still complaining, we could tell that although he was knocked flying, he was not seriously injured. After all, the Mark IV has double armor, and even the paint is not scratched at this time. However, just as he steadied himself and prepared to fight back, the man with the bug head rushed over like a rhinoceros. Another bang. Tony was knocked away again. This time he flew towards the man with insect claws on his abdomen. The man with insect claws grabbed Tony, and then the insect claws on his abdomen kept tightening. Crack and crack. The sound of armor unable to bear the weight was heard, which immediately made Tony's face change slightly. Jarvis, report the situation. Mr. Stark, you are suffering from a huge crushing force, and the armor has been bent by 1 centimeter. Activate all weapons that can fight back. The next second, a magazine popped out from Mark IV's shoulder, revealing the mini rocket inside. Rumbled. As these mini rockets were launched, the insect claw man in front of Tony was instantly knocked away. Hiss. After a roar, the insect claw man quickly climbed up. Seeing that the other person only had small wounds caused by the explosion and was recovering quickly, Tony thought to himself that it was not good. It seems that even without the mutated parts, these monsters have become extremely powerful. You should know that although these mini rockets cannot destroy heavy tanks, they are more than enough to deal with light tanks. This shows that the skin of these insect people is as hard as a medium tank. After a while, Tony saw the other 2 insect men rushing over again, so he quickly flew up and reached a height of more than 50 meters. He planned to use the same old trick again and take advantage of the fact that these insect people could not fly. If the insect man wants to evolve wings, then he can just fire armor-piercing bullets. But this time, the insect man's reaction disappointed him. After roaring for a while, the 3 insect men realized that the enemy would not come down, so they fled away. Seeing this, Tony immediately followed. He suspected that these insect people were going back, so he planned to follow them to see if he could find the enemy's lair and find out which force was studying these insect people. After chasing for more than 10 minutes, he had to launch an attack on the insect man. Because there is a small town not far ahead and there are many civilians on the road, some of whom are children. These insect people seem to have lost their minds and kill anyone they see. Even if this town is really related to the insect people, they will only investigate after killing them. SHHH. As the two missiles were launched, the three insect men were immediately blown away by the strong air wave. The attacked insect man did not run towards the town, but kept roaring at Tony in midair. Obviously, these insect people do have some problems with their intelligence. But how to solve them? Currently, the only weapon that can kill Zergmen is armor-piercing bullets, but there is no way to track armor-piercing bullets. It seems that the only way is to limit the movement space of these insect people. After looking for a while, Tony's eyes lit up. Not far away he saw a huge pit. So he lowered his figure a little and flew towards the huge pit while attacking the insect people with his palm cannon. But after flying near the pit, Tony almost vomited and his face became extremely ugly. Although the huge pit was covered with mud, a large number of corpses and body parts could still be seen. The number was so large, at least several thousand bodies, that it could simply be called a massacre. Obviously, someone massacred civilians and then dug a pit to bury them. But because it was not buried deep enough, it was dug out by animals. Oh my God, are these all civilians massacred by the 10 Rings gang? They are simply demons. After asking Jarvis to take photos and record videos, he immediately remembered his purpose. Looking back, he found that 3 insect people had actually jumped into the mass burial pit, picked up the corpses' limbs and started eating them. Sure enough, a beast is a beast. The next second, 3 armor-piercing bullets were fired and instantly hit the 3 insect men who were eating. Boom! After a burst of explosions, the 3 insect men that had given him a headache were turned into pieces. After picking up some scraps of meat to study, he flew up again and went back. He must make what happened here public so that the whole world will know about the atrocities that took place here. After an hour, in a secret base of the 10 Rings gang, a man wearing a face scarf with only his eyes exposed walked into the office. Sitting in the office was a Middle Eastern man in his 60s with a long beard. He is the current leader of the 10 Rings gang, the Son of God. Ever since the Mandarin abandoned the 10 Rings gang and disappeared more than 20 years ago, the 10 Rings gang's influence in the Middle East has been taken over by the Son of God. After hearing the sound of the door opening, the Son of God raised his head and looked at the person who came. Muhaddad, what's the hurry? Muhaddad was still panting at this time and said hurriedly, "Sir, our troops in Gumira have suffered heavy losses and 3 people who were granted the divine gift have also died." Upon hearing about such a huge loss, the Son of God frowned. "Who did it?" "We don't know yet." Muhaddad shook his head and asked hesitantly, "Is it possible that the U.S. military did it?" In 8, the U.S. military could be called the world police and meddle in other people's affairs because there was no force that could confront it. Muhaddad was well aware of what they had done, so he was afraid that the U.S. military had intervened. But when the Son of God heard this, he immediately shook his head. "It can't be the U.S. military." Seeing Muhaddad's puzzled expression, he did not continue to explain but just said, "Maybe it's the Iron Man or the guy called Iron Man from last time. Send people to the surrounding villages to ask if any robots have appeared." "Yes." Muhaddad nodded and turned to leave. Watching his men leave, the Son of God rubbed his temples with a headache, then took out a mobile phone hidden in a secret compartment and made a mysterious call. "An hour ago, our base in Gumira was attacked." "Who is it?" "I don't know who the enemy is yet, but he must be very powerful. I have already lost 4 enhanced people." "You know we can't possibly help you. I need 300 million knives to buy 30 of the same strengthening potions I bought last time." "Impossible. How much can you give?" There was silence on the phone for a while. "How's your plan going?" "When the plan was at a critical moment, they promised us that as long as we took over the Gumira area, they would cooperate with us to attack from the south. 100 million Dao, when you capture Gumira, I will call you." "Doodle." Seeing the other party hang up the phone, Shengzi put down the phone expressionlessly, lowered his head, and no one knew what he was thinking.